Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece, Luffy's Mother is Who? By Rose 7 and 101. Marineford never happened. Big Mom learned something about Luffy that rocks the world to its foundations. Alliances are formed and tested, while the seas are thrown into turmoil as Luffy's allies rush to save him before it is too late. Adios.
Still in his dragon form, Momonosuke's eyes were bugging out at the sight of Izo. Yet he was stammering too hard to be understood. Indeed, the Whitebeard pirate mistook it for gibberish noises from Rebecca's pet and dismissed it. At first glance the similarity to a dragon had been striking, yes, yet it was too weak and scrawny to be a threat. Besides, there was only ever a single dragon at a time, so any similarities were simply a coincidence. "So this is Zo," Izo said, looking around in wonder. "Now I finally get to see what the dog and cat were always going on about." "Do you mean our kings?" asked Pedro diffidently, hoping to convey the need for secrecy here. Because yes, they knew this man was of the Kazukui clan, but also it was not Pedro's right to make decisions when certain secrets were to be revealed, and he hoped to bring their rulers in on this. Both Izo and Marco's eyes twitched slightly in surprise, only before they could say anything or figure it out. Izo, the gunslinger, gaped for a split second before grinning wide at the sight of his old friends, brothers, and so much more. Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, Kinemon, oh wow, Kin, you haven't aged a day. This something Lady Toki did? Wait, what? Gasped Marco, breaking the stunned silence. She was serious about that time travel, yoi. As if my lady would ever lie, huffed Izo. Oratal Island, Marco deadpanned. That was for the worthy cause of a prank against Lord Odin, and so doesn't count. Also, afterwards he was boasting about how she fooled him for weeks. Well, that was more to explain why his hair was pink, cackled Nekomamushi, shaking off his own shock. Izoo. With that the cat mink pounced upon his old friend, with the rest of the red scabbards following suit. "Ah, Jarif, how'd you grow so big, ya darn furball?" The samurai also hefted Izo up on their shoulders, and ran for the tree line without another word. Should we, do something about our crewmate getting kidnapped?" asked Ace awkwardly. Coughing into his fist, Pedro said, "Our lieges will want to talk with him, in private." -00 to 0. Izu, wailed Rizo, tears running down his face. The crossdresser stared at the ninja chained to the poneglyph, before pointing at him and turning to the others with a questioning look. "He took exception to us being willing to die so he could live," huffed Inuarashi. "Beg your pardon?" With an overdramatic sigh, Nekomamushi explained. "We've been fighting for days to stop those beast pirates who were after him, even though we kept saying he wasn't here." "Curious," mused Izo, scratching his chin. "Jack wouldn't have done that unless he was confident you were here. And how do you locate Zo in the first place? Maybe there's someone left we can question?" The others nodded grimly. While as samurai there were lines they would not cross, they were not afraid to threaten and rough up some beaten pirates. "Can we count on Whitebeard's help?" asked Nekomamushi, while he worked to undo the chains. "Indeed," nodded Inuarashi while he handled the cuffs. "We know they're already enemies, but we wish to be sure." "That's what I was implying, you." The cat mink cut himself off and looked away. They were still getting used to not fighting one another, so this was the best he could offer in apology. "Yes," nodded Izo. His brows furrowed. "I'll assume you got Momonosuke out?" "All good." He smiled in relief at the pride on their faces. Odin and Toki's legacy was safe. "Wait, what about Hiyori?" "We. Lady Toki. They had to be separated. Kawamatsu took her. Nobody had heard anything of them, so he has kept them hidden and safe." That was one interpretation of what could have happened, but Izo refused to let despair rule him. His friend would keep the sweet princess alive and happy. It was more hope than he had known a few minutes ago. The Kazuki clan was alive, and by his samurai soul Izo would do all he could for his people this time. Good, good. "We need help though," confessed Nekomamushi. "Old Whitebeard up for one more fight together?" "Yes. For his nephew he will," promised Izo, "one way or another." No matter how much he loved his pops and the Mobi, he would not allow them to stand on the sidelines this time. And he knew many others of the division commanders would support him in this. Especially since Kaido more or less joined forces with the Marines 2 years ago, and took in a traitor of ours. Consider it both business and pleasure here, and your victory here in Zou means Wano is finally vulnerable enough for us to make our move. An uneasy, sickening sensation started to make its way up the others' spines and clench their throats. Little clues coming together. "Wait," said Kinemon, staring with wide eyes. He whispered, "You knew? You knew Odin was dead, and Wano enslaved?" In his shame, Izo dropped his gaze to the ground. "Yes. It took years for us to learn, but yes. All this time, and you did nothing," raged Raizo. "Neko and Inu were preparing an army, but what did you do? Did you even know of the prophecy like they did?" Honest confusion crossed the Whitebeard commander's face in answer. "How could you betray Odin's memory in favor of sailing with pirates?" demanded Kinemon. "We lost 20 years, but you never did anything at all. You should have returned to fight for your people, your family." Something ugly snapped in the other man. "They were the only family I had left," he spat. "Kikunojo and you lot were gone, and I would have died a pointless death trying on my own, and Pops didn't want to risk the bloodshed that would follow. Yet you were ready to go to war when Fire Fist was captured by Kaido," growled Inuarashi in warning. "Because Ace was still alive. Unlike Odin. Why is that?" With a scream, Kinemon threw himself at Izo's throat. -0 to 0. Luffy senpai's about to get married. Luffy senpai's about to get married. Luffy senpai's about to get married. Luffy senpai's about to get. Nope. It still wasn't working. Bartolomeo tried saying it out loud again. Luffy senpai was about to get married. Luffy senpai, the ex-mafia boss, paused. He felt conflicted and really, utterly confused. But he knew one thing. He would always support Luffy Sanapi's decisions. If Luffy senpai wants to get married, then Bartolomeo would be there for this momentous occasion. He would etch it into his memory. Because there was no way his idol had been captured. Clearly this was part of some cunning plan to infiltrate an emperor's palace. He would be the best man. Yes, it was his solemn duty to be Luffy Sanapi's best man, and make sure the wedding went without a hitch. Everything will be so very fabulous and wonderful as befitting of Luffy Sanapi. A wedding for a king, 'cause Luffy Sanapi was the future pirate king. Wait for me, Luffy Sanapi, I will make sure you have the wedding of all weddings. -0 to 0. There was no skill or finesse as Kinemon and Izo rolled across the ground, acting more like wild animals than samurai. Enough! Roared Inuarashi, yanking them apart, and dangling them above the ground. What would Kanjuro say if he saw us like this? For the sake of our fallen brother, we can't fight amongst ourselves. Wait, what? Asked Izo, the words breaking through his red haze. What happened? Gasped Raizo. I assumed he was distracting the others. And grief broke through Kinemon's own fury, bringing up the pain which had infested his heart. Kanjuro is dead. Kaido's henchman, his last general, killed him. And it was all preventable, bemoaned Nikoamushi. He let his emotions master him, and he became reckless. One of the pirates, Trafalgar Law, misread the situation, as he thought as strangers, and made the wrong call. No, breathed Raizo. For the first time, Izo's hands went to his guns in a white-knuckle grip. You're sure we shouldn't take our revenge? Inhaling deeply, and letting it out, Kinemon nodded, if with some regret. Yes. Law's actions were not out of malice. Moreover, he's us. Jack is the one who cut down our friend, our brother, and he is dead. That is all that matters. -0 to 0. You're here, I missed you, Captain. Beppo rubbed Law's cheek with his, feeling relief and happiness. All the members of the Heart Pirates are here. In lieu of praise for such a frankly noteworthy accomplishment, Law just patted his navigator and first mate on the back. His crew burst out crying at the display of such open affection from him. Unfortunately, they did have an audience of various minks and other pirates, meaning it was best not to get too sappy about it, so with a pointed glance around, he turned and headed off in the direction of the Straw Hats. He had missed the whole bit of enemy reinforcements, and the subsequent discovery it was actually allies arriving, or at least the allies of his allies, but the rumor mill was in full swing already. Truly, Mr. Straw Hat was incapable of existing without causing unnecessary chaos. Even when he was not around, of course on the way he had to put up with his crew bemoaning how Mr. Straw Hat was gaining even more publicity, going on and on about how their beloved captain should have received more of the credit, and a higher bounty for that matter. As if Law cared. Still, he had them hush up when a few bits of gossip he overheard implied some of the newcomers were Rubber Brain's adoptive brothers. Best not to make a bad first impression with the Whitebeard pirates when they were all supposed to be friendly with one another. Especially when he was more interested in getting an accurate picture of what was happening. Some of the things people were saying were quite ridiculous, and obviously exaggerated. They were not exaggerated. If anything, they understated the mess they were now in. Not that this was apparently a concern for the Straw Hat pirates, as they intended to double down and dig themselves even deeper towards hell, all while dousing themselves with gasoline, as they were apparently planning a rescue mission which would put them at war with a second emperor. Even if they were getting some admittedly impressive assistance. Overall, Law felt entirely justified as his frustration over the situation with Mr. Straw Hat was laid out. Literally in this case, as the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff, he had yet to get a satisfactory answer as to why he was here, had gotten bored of the recap, and was laying out various pieces of paper and pictures on the ground. "What are you doing?" asked Fire Fist. "Before I left, I took as much as possible of those comic strips. Given how uncannily similar they're to the real deal, I thought it was a good idea for research," Sabo muttered as he rearranged various comic pages spread out in front of him. He was clearly trying to put them in some kind of order, yet the pattern eluded Law. "Research, huh? Yeah, research. You have a problem with that, Ace?" "Nope." But the grin on his face got slightly bigger, as Sabo, the self-proclaimed big brother, decided to ignore his annoying little brother antics, and refocused on his job. "I wonder about the technology they use for cloning. They actually explain this in the comics, Yoi? I don't." "Yes, cut in the Surgeon of Death. Well, not in detail, but in one of earlier stories, Sora breaks into their evil laboratory and tries to find out about it, and destroys the whole process, including touching on what exactly cloning entails. They give descriptions of the..." "What?" Law demanded, when he saw all eyes staring at him in a weird way. "Captain, you know a lot about this. Yeah, I used to read it as a kid," Law murmured, not liking all the attention. "Oh, I found it," Sabo said, waving an entire issue of the series. Then he examined it with a blank face, murmuring, "The laboratory is very detailed." Yet there was a gleam in his eyes as he announced, "It was published a year ago." Everyone's gaze was on him, no one said anything, the pressure was suffocating. "Okay, fine. I am." Law choked on the last word, "Damn them." "A what? I can't hear you, could you please repeat that?" "A fan. I am a bloody fan. FAN got a problem with that?" "Nope. Nah. A fan. Law knew this was going to be a very long journey, he couldn't wait for it to be over. -00 to 0. Straw Hats. As when the group of pirates turned their attention upon the mink, and for some reason he flinched back under their combined glare. Hi," he weakly waved. "Yes," said Robin, the picture of civility so long as you ignored the unholy glint in her eyes. "Oh, Dr. Miyagi," chirped Chopper, and there was genuine enthusiasm in his voice, in contrast to the "I have to laugh or start killing" aura he and the others had been sharing earlier with all the reveals. The rest of the pirates blinked before registering the medical coat beneath all the blood and grime. If you're not too busy," Miyagi trailed off nervously. "Gah, I'm so sorry," Dr. Chopper blurted out. "I was so worried about more pirates to fight, and then distracted by the time travel stuff. And I forgot about the patients." He morphed into his walk point, and raced off as fast as his 4 hoofs could carry him. In short order he reached where all the patients were being kept, with awnings now set up over them, and threw himself into his work. It was interesting working with people so much like himself, nice. Not that he minded being with his fellow humans of the Straw Hats, yet the part of him that was forever a reindeer found it pleasant being with those covered in fur like him. Once everyone was out of danger here, and if there was still nothing he could currently do to help Luffy while Zoro and the others prepared, there was so much he would have to ask the minks. With a touch of reluctance he pushed away his fury at his captain's situation, and focused on saving lives. Well, actually dying was less of a concern than it would be for humans, as minks were apparently a hardy bunch. Yet as a doctor he remained obligated to speed up their recovery as much as possible, even if he also wanted to rejoin his crewmates. It was all very strange and confusing, but he would make do. Everything changed, however, right after he had finished changing the bandages for one lion mink from an emergency battlefield patch to a proper wrap with stitches, and was looking for someone else to treat. "Ah, it's Mr. Chopper, right?" Grumbling a little at the interruption, he turned around only to be overwhelmed by a scent and vision of beauty. A reindeer mink. Her fur was lush and healthy, antlers tall and proud, and long blonde hair glistening in the sunlight. Ah, he stuttered. "You may not remember me," she smiled, "but I was helping you with the wounded." His mind blanked as he tried to process the impossibility of how he could have ever missed. No, wait, he could believe it. Helping everyone had been very distracting, and saving lives had taken precedence. He would not turn into an idiot like Sanji over a lady. Yes, Tony Chopper was a fearsome pirate, and he would retain his cool no matter the circumstances. "Oh wait, was she saying something? Sorry," he managed, "could you say that again?" "Don't worry," she assured him, "I'm sure you're exhausted after all you've done. I said my name's Milky." What a perfect name. Before he knew it, he was striking up a conversation with her even as he continued at his job. "Oh, I'm not a mink," he corrected. "I'm a reindeer who ate the human fruit." "Oh my," she gasped in wonder, and he valiantly ignored how it made his heart beat faster. "That's amazing. Which do you identify as?" "Both." "Fair enough. It must be strange though, being here after so long living amongst just humans though. Or have you met minks before?" "Well, there's Beppo, but we had bigger concerns so I was distracted. And Maeve thought he was just a guy wearing a lot of fur. Speaking of which, what's being a mink like?" She stopped for a moment, before slowly explaining what it was. Leo, a whole country which properly understood the importance of conditioner. Amazing. Time passed before he knew it, and that was the last patient. As he surveyed the rows of beds, it dawned upon him that it was mainly just minks. Well, alright, that made sense. The few humans he made out though, were dressed more like their allies. What had happened to the beast pirates? When he asked, Milky did not know. "Oh, them? We dumped them over there." Chopper froze. Surely they didn't. Rounding upon the rapidly stiffening pirate who had said so, he shouted, "What did you say?" Where?" Trembling, the man pointed in the right direction, and shifting forms once more, Chopper raced off on all four hooves. After a few seconds, he could find his way solely by the scent of blood, and reached an open plaza where what seemed like hundreds of their defeated enemies were lying around in various forms of distress. Ha 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 ha. A few of the more conscious ones were desperately trying to do what they could to help their crewmates. Ha 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 ha. Blessedly, some of the minks were providing what medical aid they could as well. Ha 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 ha. But why were they all laughing so hard they were crying? Was this some sort of side effect of a drug to make them fight better? No matter, Chopper's responsibility was clear. The way they were all laid out so haphazardly, there was no system to work with, so he threw himself into assessing those nearest to him. If he felt their injuries were stable enough, he would move on to the next. Ha 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 ha. A rush of feet, and Milky came up alongside him, carrying a bag of medical supplies which she offered to him. I didn't. "Thank you," he said distractedly, taking out some bandages even as his eyes roved over one pirate. "Let's get to work." Ha 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 ha. Feverishly he moved, saving what lives he could. Although these people were surprisingly durable for humans, he had assumed Luffy and the others were more of outliers. Thankfully the laughing and crying was also starting to taper off, although even if whatever was in their eyes did not seem malicious, it still raised the fur on his spine. Something was very wrong with these people, and he feared it was not in a way he could treat with whatever medicines currently available to him. "You help even your enemies," said Milky softly after they had worked through at least a dozen more patients. "I'm a doctor," he replied stubbornly. "A pirate doctor, but a doctor, and that'll never change." I'm glad, and at the tone in her voice he turned to see the open admiration in her eyes. And oh dear, something was wrong with his heart. Why was it swelling and pounding like that? Ah. Was this Sanji-itis? Don't try to compliment me, you. Fortunately his brain reasserted itself, and cut off his insult. Thank you, he managed to stutter out. Ah, shut up with the mushy talk, screeched a beast pirate as he leapt up from where he had been playing possum. Jagged knife plunging down. Now be good hostages and. In an explosion of fur and muscle, Chopper towered over the man in his heavy point, a single hand engulfing an entire arm as the knife fell from limp fingers. You want to remember, snarled Chopper as he squeezed, I'm a pirate. I kill people. You said you're a doctor, squeaked out the pirate. I have bad days. The would-be kidnapper collapsed in a dead faint. Wow, gasped Milky, dropping her mouth open, staring at him wide-eyed. Shane curled up through his anger, and Chopper slumped back into his little brain point. I'm sorry for that. I'll go. What? Why? She closed the gap in a blink, kneeling down to grasp his shoulder, her presence making him flush. But I said all that, and then He cut himself off as she laid one furry finger against his lips. Like you said, you're a pirate doctor. And at the end of the day, you save more lives than you take. You're a good mink, Dr. Chopper, and I'm proud to have met you. Once more a strange sensation washed over Chopper, except this time it was a comforting warmth and sense of clarity. Now, she smiled, let's get back to work, yes. Besides, after that little display, none of the beast pirates dared cause trouble again. -0 Big Mom. They were planning to invade Big Mom's territory, right into one of her infamous tea parties. A woman who he, the genius Caesar clown, may have made certain promises to while accepting some of her money to do so, and may instead spent a little of it on some other, unrelated things. Okay, so it was a lot of money, and he had spent most of it on booze and women instead of fulfilling a dream she was frankly pathological about. And now they were planning on dragging him to her doorstep. Kill him now, will you? He had thought things were bad enough as they were. What the hell? Those crazy, mad Straw Hats, first Joker, then Kaido, and now Big Mom at the same time. And they dared to call him a mad scientist. He was the sanest one here. He needed to escape this lunatic asylum. Kaido would not go out of his way to rescue him, and really, while that emperor was better than Big Mom, low bar, and Caesar's relationship with him and Joker had allowed lots of freedom to invent, he was still seriously considering terminating their partnership. Even with fewer restrictions and demands, there were still enough to be frustrating. He had spent hours every day checking on Sad alone. And if he was okay with putting up with that, he would have stayed with that stuck-up know-it-all Vegapunk. First of all though, he needed to find a way to escape before that crazy hag found him. Her and her crazy obsession with making giants. The Straw Hats were crazy, but she was on another level as a mass-murdering psychopath. He needed to get his heart back and escape. Carrot was on a mission. Not a mission from one of the kings, but a self-appointed mission, which didn't mean it was any less as important and urgent of a mission. A mission was a mission. She had kept hearing this and that about Monkey D. Luffy, how amazing he was, and the sorts of things he had done, and people said he had not actually been kidnapped, that it was all a ploy and he was a mastermind, etc. Her self-appointed mission for the good of the kingdom was to find out the truth about the boss of their saviors. It wasn't because she was curious. She is a rabbit, not a cat. Anyway, the easiest thing to do is to go and ask his actual crew. But Carrot felt that was not the best course of action. After all, they will have a biased outlook as he was their captain, so it was better to go with someone without so close a relationship. Yeah, she was smart. No, it wasn't because she was intimidated by the Straw Hats, or that they had this angry cloud surrounding them, and every instinct was telling her to stay away. She was a warrior. Things like that didn't scare her. Hey, Yes, I wanted to ask about Captain Luffy. -0 Despite the Straw Hat Pirates being stuck with resting murder faces, especially usually adorable Chopper, they still got a victory party going. That said, it was still a wild event to vent emotions, celebrate being alive, and such a decisive victory against one of the four emperors themselves. Why at this rate, they would all be torn down, and Luffy would have the One Piece before the year was out. Marco, Ace, and the other Whitebeard pirates nodded indulgently to this. However, it was still no surprise that the Straw Hats turned in early. After they had left, Inuarashi and Nekomamushi exchanged a significant look, and got up themselves, telling their aides the two of them were going to get some fresh air together, and peacefully address a few lingering issues between them. All minks within earshot were so overwhelmed with joy, they had to hasten to assure the concerned pirates these were happy tears. Kine, asking to talk to Law in private. The Surgeon of Death was a little wary until he saw Momosuke was coming as well, trusting that with his son nearby, the samurai would not try anything unwise over Kanjuro. Any further suspicions were eased when they met both the Mink Kings and Straw Hats, as Kinemon would certainly know better than to cause trouble with them around. Although he was surprised to see the latter group still awake. Part of him wondered what their hosts had said to convince them otherwise. Things became surreal from there though. They were led to that large tree shaped like a whale, and within a secret chamber met Raizo, the companion Kinemon had mentioned before. Indeed, it was revealed that he was the reason the beast pirates had attacked. Oh, and there was a red Ponagle with him. Every revelation which followed became all the more absurd than the last, yet always with that uncomfortable sensation of how they were telling the truth. Ninja. He did not gush over that. The road poneglyphs. How to reach Laughtail, which was apparently the original name Roger gave it, which had all sorts of implications right there. This perverted brat being the rightful ruler of Wano. By the way, it's amazing how big you've grown, dog and cat. Law would bet only that kid was allowed to refer to the two fearsome warrior kings as that. Time travel. What? Oh, right, you missed that part. Ah, so Kanjuro actually had been familiar with these minks, and so they would have known how to help him. Law still silently thought him an idiot. Kaido's insidious grasp upon Wano, but also how they would find allies there, which was good, since the Emperor still had an army, weakened or not, and would be after Law's head, so better to take the initiative with allies at his side. And there they ran into a sticking point. We can't agree to anything without Luffy, was Zoro's flat statement. Briefly Law considered arguing over it, because surely it would be a formality, yet could also tell this was something they would not relent upon. Moreover, he could respect that sort of loyalty. Surprisingly though, the samurai accepted this as well. Maybe something about their own code of honor the people of Wano were supposed to have. Well, it was not like he was truly shocked at the idea they were planning a rescue mission by busting into the territory of the Big Mom pirates. In denial initially? Yes. Was this something unexpected from them? No, not really. Honestly, they had had less reason and motivation to sign up for an alliance with him, which they had actually stayed faithful to despite his initial assumptions, than they did right now. I shall accompany you, declared Raizo the ninja. My stealth will be a boon to you. Later Law would learn this had been something of contention between the samurai, on whether or not Raizo would go to Wano or help here, only to eventually conclude that Luffy would be under such high security that the pirates would need all the help they could get. Ow! Cried out Frankie, locking his arms together overhead. With a ninja on our side, this'll be a piece of cake, gushed Usopp. Luffy will be so impressed, cheered Nami. Your aid will certainly be appreciated, smiled Robin gratefully. Now we're far less likely to die impaled upon stakes as an example to others. Robin, wailed Nami. This won't be easy, said Brook quietly and evenly, yet everyone hung on to his words. Wherever they're keeping Luffy, we must assume it's under the tightest security to hold him there without escaping. With a grunt, Zoro threw in, we've just got to get there before he's gnawing off limbs to get free of sea stone shackles, or something. Or because he's hungry. Oh. Wait. Was Law the one to say that out loud? Judging by the glares, he was. Oops. Oh, Sanji. Food. Keep your shirt on you glutton. I'm cooking for a whole kingdom here. You've got all those chefs, and they're all useless. That piece of fish bait didn't know good food if it leapt up and bit his face off. Well hurry it up. Oh, the next morning, Law was relieved to see everybody getting down to business. Sure, a lot of people had hangovers, but so long as they were productive and suffered in silence, all was well. They were having a war council, piecing together all their intelligence about the two emperors they were dealing with here. While there had been some perfectly understandable outcry and panic at such odds by the members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, Nico Robin had placated their nerves by appealing to their greed and revealing they already had one of the road poneglyphs, which those in the know realized she could read. As the explanation of what that meant was spread around, he mentally applauded at how she had implied it was a gift to Luffy from Rayleigh the Dark King. Unfortunately, and inevitably it seems when his allies were involved, things started to go downhill from there. At the start, the Whitebeard pirates, and surprisingly one mink named Pedro, provided detailed information about the crew structure of the Big Mom pirates. Law had acted all disinterested, but in reality was keenly listening. Even if he thought this mission was insane, he had faith in these lunatics, and, well, it was only a matter of time before he found himself fighting Big Mom regardless as he continued down this path. Marco had finished explaining the general structure of Captain, several elite, executive officers, many regular officers, and a legion of lower-ranking grunts. How non-family members had chess titles, and mentioned something about a homie army, plus mentioning ministers who ran islands, before getting into the details. Pedro injected, the 4 sweet commanders, from strongest to weakest, are the 2nd son, Katakuri, the 14th daughter, Smoothie, the 10th son, Cracker, and the 25th son, Snack. Marco cut in, they're 3 now, Yoi, Snack was demoted. Was he? Why? Not long ago. He was beaten by someone you might be familiar with. Your rogue. Another member of your worst generation, Yoi. The way he pitched his voice as he said that term, made it hard for Law to tell if the Phoenix actually respected Law and his peers, or considered them like adorable little puppies making a mess. Wait, so all the commanders are her kids? Yup. How many children does the hag have? 39. What? How? Is that even possible? With Luffy it will be 40. Luffy has 39 siblings. Hey, shouted Ace and Sabo at the same time. 41. Holy Kraken. Chill, Luffy's big brothers. Don't you forget it, Ace glared. How could it be? Maybe if she birthed triplets? You mean quadruplets? Does Luffy have a twin? Oh god. We are doomed? Another Luffy? Maybe 3 of him. Doomed. Shut up, Yoi, and let me finish. The fact that Marco had raised his voice was so rare and surprising, that even those who didn't know him for too long quieted down. As I said, Marco said slowly, daring anyone to cut in. 39, Marco paused, and everyone stayed quiet, daughters, and 46 sons. With Luffy it will be 47 sons, Yoi. His explanation was met with a stunned silence that lingered a few beats. Even Law was stunned. Oh, sure, he had heard she had a lot of kids, hence her epithet, but he was assuming it was like 20 or something. The Straw Hats as one turned to Ace, who nodded his head in confirmation. Zoro finally murmured, maybe Usopp's theory about quadruplets isn't so far-fetched. His words broke the silence, and everyone was speaking over one another. At this point Law's brain froze at the very real threat of multiple Mr. Straw Hats driving him mad. Marco didn't even try to quiet them down this time, he just moved a few steps back to stand with his crewmates. Wanna have some popcorn? Ace asked as he waved a bag half filled in front of Marco's face. Sure, why not, Yoi? It may take a while. The 2 brothers were enjoying the show, and clearly had been preppa. Marco grabbed a few, and popped them into his mouth, and coughed right after. What the hell, Ace? Sorry, those are wasabi flavored. He was clearly not sorry at all. The other brother offered a polite smile, and said, we also have salted caramel popcorn, apple pie popcorn, coconut curry popcorn, and mint chocolate chip glazed popcorn. Marco was about to ask where the hell did they find them, or make them, or, he thought better, of it, and said, no, thank you. Wait, a loud voice cut through the noise. I said, wait damn it, you buffoons. The orange-haired woman's fury won. 86 children, right? Marco from his resting place only nodded. They all came from Big Mom, right? Marco nodded. Wondered where she was going with this. He could feel the 2 brothers going still beside him, and had even stopped munching. But are they all from the same father? All those 86 children are also from Dragon the Revolutionary? Gasps filled the air. Sabo also gasped and clutched his stomach, and began laughing. No, Koala tried to say. I said shut up, roared Nami. Alas, not even her rage could maintain control anymore. So, the same mother, but different fathers. So the question is, how many husbands? You're assuming they were married, Robin pointed out. And divorced, added Usopp. Or killed, corrected Robin. So this Big Mom is either a serial divorcee or widower. How many? Emphasized Nami. 44, shouted Ace. Are you kidding me? I haven't married once, and this hag has been married 44 times. If Sanji was here he would have proposed to you right on the spot there. Age? I'm still trying to understand how she could physically pop out this many children. It doesn't make sense. How old is she? 66 or 67 I think. Is she still popping him out? Oh, my god, no way, she's too old, it shouldn't be possible biologically, right, Chopper? Law? The man was still in a daze. If I'm not wrong, she had her last child 7 years ago. Let's hope she doesn't add more, seriously, she can't, it isn't possible. How does she pick them, her husbands, partners, whatever? Is it random? I think some of them are kings or rulers. I heard this too. Do people agree to this? Or does she force them? Usually there is a contract of some sort, I think. But threatening is a good summary, yoi. However I look at it, this woman spends more time pregnant than not pregnant. Just or maybe wow. I really don't know, how can she remember her children's names? Forget that, how could she name them all? Usopp counted on his finger, Katakuri, Smoothie, Cracker, Snack, and the one to marry Sanji is Pudding. I see a pattern here, foodstuff. Sweets more accurately, noted Robin. You are not wrong, Pedro said. There's Daifuku, Brulee, Cinnamon, Brownie, Mascarpone. What kind of monster calls their child, mascarpone? But there are a few names unrelated to food like oven. That's still related to food, Niwatori, chicken? She called her son chicken. Maybe it's a daughter, high fat. You're making this up. This is the funniest thing I've ever heard, Anana. Wait, doesn't Anana mean pineapple? Marco, are you Big Mom's son too? It could be a daughter, or maybe he's a husband. Oi, no, maybe she was so impressed by you that she decided to name a son after you, but couldn't remember your name, only your head shape. Could be, makes sense. Someone call Pops, and tell him he finally has the grandson or granddaughter that he always wanted. Undisclosed to them, Pops had given a secret mission to Izo to have everything recorded for his entertainment later. The recording Den Mushi was busy at work hidden under the kimono folds of our samurai. At least we know one thing. What, she wasn't the one that named Luffy. Oh god, yes, what the hell would she have named him? Luffy is Luffy. I know, Usopp exclaimed, she probably would have named him Meat. The growing absurdity finally snapped Law out of his mental breakdown. Unbelievable. This was supposed to be a council of war. An assembly of chaos and doom more like it. His doom if anyone was wondering. Tora-o? An insistent voice that kept getting louder distributed his musings of his coming and nearing doom. Hey, Tora-o guy, come on man, you're a doctor, so give us an answer already. How late can she go popping out children? Can she still do it even as old a hag as she is? Tell us, doctor. Yeah, we are listening, Sora wannabe. Yeah, shouldn't you know this Master Fan? Who's Sora? You weren't in the last meeting, listen. That's it, swore Law. As soon as I can find a break in this idiocy without offending anyone, I'm volunteering to take the samurai and some minks ahead to Wano to scout the place out. I can't take another day stuck with this lot. -00 to 0 Jinbei was wondering how this was his life. Where did he go wrong in his choices to lead him to this moment, stuck babysitting, guarding the princess and her little friends, or as they kept telling him, the charming Prince Roby and his 5 vigilant knights? If he was to guess, it was when he took the mantle as captain of the Sun Pirates. Nope, no doubt, his crew seemed to enjoy the new addition to the crew too much. Too much for his sanity and comfort. Did he cause this sort of trouble for Brother T and never realize it? Was this some sort of revenge beyond the grave? The charming prince and his valiant knights' ongoing planning and conversation was still ongoing, with some interjection from the squires. Yes, the feared and only Fishman pirate crew were bestowed the title of squires, while he was the only one to be appointed as a fellow knight, 'cause he was called Jinbei, Knight of the Sea. Aladdin joked about saving face at least. There was a ceremonial sword and everything. Sorry, Queen Otahime. Fairy tales will henceforth be banned from Fishman Island, even if that was the last thing he ever did. You can tell him how you feel, me, Roby murmured shyly. Yes, indeed, no, maybe, so what if you did or didn't? How? Princess Shirahoshi. Roby asked. Like how you told Vandari Dekani that he is not your type. Oh, is Luffy your type? No, maybe, yes. Why does it matter? Yonka too, the one to always question everything her other 4 sisters ever said. Someone needed to be the devil's advocate and she had the official appointment, so why not? Paused and muttered to herself. Imagine going all the way, and saving him, and the princess shouting at Luffy, "You're not my type." She paused and then whispered to herself, on second thought, that would be awesome. Loudly she shouted, "We should go to the wedding." Everyone turned to her, staring with mouth agape at her agreement with the others. A few punched and pinched themselves. Others murmured about miracles and omens. A fight erupted if it was a good or bad omen. Jinbei cleared his throat and reminded them, "We are already on our way there." "Oh, Knight Jinbei, what do you think?" "About what?" he murmured with dread in his belly. 5 pairs of eyes rolled at him. How should Roby confess to Luffy, duh. All the other pairs of eyes turned to stare at him, all gleaming and waiting, hungry, starving to hear his wisdom. Jinbei gulped. "Excellent question," Aladdin observed loudly, and the girls, no, I mean, the prince and his knights preened at the compliment, and for the right person. Behind the man, Charlotte Praline was sniggering into her hand at the show, quite happy to betray both her mom and Jinbei in turn in favor of her husband. "See, Jinbei here wants Luffy. I mean the princess as his new captain, so he should know such an easy answer." Yeah, he shouldn't have become the damn captain. If Alden wasn't to be the new captain when he left, he would have throttled him. Maybe he would before this wad only just begun after all. With deflated shoulders and ignoring the eyes staring at him in expectation, the sun captain murmured to himself, "Nika the sun god, have mercy and save me from." Yes. Jinbei froze. Did God just answer Knight Jinbei? The voice demanded from where? It was coming below. Oh, he was looking at the little mermaid called Nika. Unimpressed, and with an arched eyebrow, Nika asked, "You called?" "No, my mistake, sorry." She huffed and shook her head, and with one last glance at the poor knight she turned to join her sisters, who were still looking at him, but with disapproval, and disappointed. He heard Aldine murmur to his wife, "Maybe he will be demoted." Jinbei sighed, he should have known better by now, for even the gods had abandoned him, or why else was he stuck not only with a sniggering Aladdin, but also the man's wife? They were truly a couple forged in the bubbling volcanoes of the deepest depths. Scratch that. He bet it was where they spent their honeymoon. -00 there was a quiet tension in Wano. It spread across the land from the nervousness the beast pirate overseers displayed at times, the hushed conversations they cut off if any of the locals got too close. Observant individuals noted how similar it was to 2 years ago when there were rumors of the beast pirates fighting a large battle. One after which, Queen was no longer seen around, and the Flying Six far less often. No word about King either. Ever since then, sometimes Orochi would get lost in pensive thought, nervous about something beyond the ghosts of the Kazuki clan haunting him, which his nobles caught the scent of, and whispers of it trickled down from them. All of which had been there even before tales of the return of the 9 scabbards began to spread. Only a few knew the truth. That 2 years ago the invincible Kaido and his forces had suffered serious setbacks in the foreign lands. How now his forces were spread thin to compensate these days. The recent death of Jack, by causes unknown, was something they now struggled to keep secret. "Do not trouble yourself, Lord Shogun," swore a kneeling man, his massive pompadour covering up his head. "Now that I'm aware of the situation, my men and I will redouble our efforts to ensure law and order within the flower capital. So traitors cannot make any headway. We will make up for the beast pirates' inability to fulfill their obligations to you." "Gufufufufufu, well said. You are so dependable, Kiyoshiro," crowed Orochi. "With you by my side, the glory of Wano that is my rule, shall not fall." "Indeed, my lord," promised, napping, Kiyoshiro, continuing to keep his head down in supplication. However, this position and his massive piece of hair hid Kiyoshiro's malicious smile. This must be Kinemon's work. Even now, away from Wano, he sets in play our vengeance, our justice. It certainly fit the timing, as it had been nearly 20 years now as foretold by the prophecy. Soon, the wait would be over, and the true samurai of Wano would make their move. For in truth, his name was actually Denjiro, one of the very 9 red scabbards of the Kazuki clan whose ghosts kept Orochi awake at night. For years he had sullied his honor for the opportunity to avenge his beloved lord, and return peace and prosperity to the land. An opportunity which held even greater potential now, as Kaido's forces weakened. The more and more Orochi became dependent upon the traitor in his midst, the easier victory would be. It took a few more minutes of groveling before he was finally able to go. Before leaving though, he stopped by Fukuroju to discuss any possible concerns. Best to maintain the persona of being diligent and competent, even if the ninja likely had a good idea how much Kiyoshiro bad-mouthed Orochi when at private parties. A little growling from a dog at his master's back was acceptable, so long as he would still bite where told. With that, he made his way to go see a friend of his. Sure enough, Sasaki was waiting for him at the entrance to the palace. "Kiyoshiro," grinned the member of the Flying Six, tusks on full display. "Great to see you," pulling the Yakuza boss into a half-hug. "We took care of those pests for ya." "Ah, many thanks," he smiled back. Despite everything, Denjiro could not help but like Sasaki. The man was an excellent drinking buddy, had fascinating stories, good jokes, and was always polite to the consorts. All to the point that Denjiro was not entirely confident he could kill this man. Well, face to face, blades in hand for sure, but not by deception. Hopefully he could take the pirate prisoner though. Lowering his voice a little, Sasaki added, "But it might be the last time for a while I can get called in when somebody's causing a fuss on her turf. Just to keep in mind." Which was nice to confirm, and why Denjiro had Hiyori help him discreetly arrange that incident to see if any of the Flying Six would be sent as usual. It was by simple chance that Sasaki was the one available to do it. And usually the beast pirates sent 2 of that elite unit. "Oh my, I guess I'll have to handle it then," sighed Denjiro melodramatically, only to split his face with a large yawn. "Ha ha. Just don't fall asleep during it." They chatted a little more before parting ways, each having their own responsibilities to carry out. Later, when he had a moment of privacy, he pulled out the piece of paper Sasaki had slipped up his sleeve. "Buddy, Kaido wants a word with you, preferably tonight, don't tell Orochi." What followed was a brief series of instructions on when and where to meet Sasaki by the docks. Clearly they also expected him to handle slipping away and providing himself with an alibi himself. The timing would be pretty tight too, to fulfill his obligations as Yoshimitsu Kozo, especially since it would hardly do for people to wonder why the infamous thief had taken the night off. Well, this should be interesting. Despite how they knew they had to keep running for their lives, the citizens and pirates could not help but glance back. She was an overweight woman, face creased by aged smile lines around her mouth, and frown ones at her eyes. A hooked nose like a caricature of a witch, thick lipstick as if attempting to make herself look young, long and messy pink hair brushed to the sides, the shade matched by the pink of her dress, which had darker spots on it. Atop her head rested a Commodore's hat, with an almost comical skull and crossbones adorning it. Any sense of her being just a middle-aged woman refusing to age gracefully was ruined by how she towered as high as most buildings, while a living sun and thundercloud danced around her. Eyes blazing and burning red with the malice and hunger of the truly insane. Even as her every step shook the ground beneath their feet, her very presence clenched at their hearts, and they shivered with fear at the thought of her tearing out their precious souls even from a distance. She was no joke. No caricature. When she was a mere child, she had already been feared for the blood on her hands and the atrocities she had committed. Now at her very whim, entire islands could be wiped out, hundreds to even thousands of lives slaughtered, down to even their pets and newborn babes. All at the hands of her merciless children, driven by a burning desire to do whatever it took to keep their family safe, and to not disappoint their mama. All within a single day, sometimes multiple islands per day. Because she said so. An emperor of the New World. queen of an entire archipelago covering a large swath of the New World. Born under the unassuming name of Charlotte Linlin, while to most of the world, even here within her very capital, she was best known as Big Mom. Croquembouche, she shrieked to all, demanding that her exotic treat be brought to her, or she would kill them all. An unstoppable rampage to satiate her hunger-driven rampage. Brother, cried one of her children in horror as Charlotte Moscato tried to reason with her. Begged her to wait just 30 minutes so they could finish making it. He paid for it with 40 years of his life. Big Mom, his mom, tearing it from his very soul. Master Moscato. She killed her own son. Croquembouche, she raged as she tore upon another building, searching for her desire. Run. No one can stop her now, everyone be calm, said a hard, unyielding voice over the Den Den Mushi lines, which made the populace all sag in relief. Katakuri. I've acquired Croquembouche that were in the hotel. Brothers. Sisters. Continue to evacuate the populace away from her. Retrieve Moscato so he can safely return his lost years. A distant boom was heard, and they all looked to see the familiar, reassuring tall figure leaping across the city. A plate of animated cream puffs casually balanced in his hand despite his momentum. Here Mama, Charlotte Katakuri, the second son of the Charlotte family, and head of the 3 sweet commanders called out, and she turned to him as he threw them into her agape mouth. Down they went, and she plopped back on her rear, screaming her delight. You're a lifesaver, Katakuri. Good old dependable Katakuri. We knew we could rely on you, ha, sighed Charlotte Montdor, ambling up to his big bro. What a relief you came when you did. It was purely good timing, said Katakuri, head swiveling about as he assessed the damage. I'd just come back from dropping off our errant little brother and his crew member. Oh ho, said Montdor with interest. What's, Katakuri, smiled Big Mom, stomping towards them while licking her lips with a satisfied grin. Excellent, I'm looking forward to your report. Meet me in the throne room within half an hour. Of course, Mama, he said with a quick nod of his head. I'll be sure more snacks are waiting for us there. A sharp glance at Montdor, and his younger brother understood he was in charge of damage control, and they would talk more later. Without another word, he followed behind his queen, his captain, and his mother. -00 to 0 the time passed quickly for Katakuri, barely enough for him to grab a quick snack, and check with Baron Tamago that there was nothing of importance for him to know beforehand. As he politely waited outside the doors to Mama's throne room, he worked to focus his thoughts. The ominous feeling Katakuri had felt when he spoke with his newly found brother before leaving him on the Germa 66 ship had intensified since he had left him. At first, it was just a tingling feeling in the back of his brain, like when he forgot to bring a gift to one of his siblings even though he promised, and he knew he would be in for a tantrum. Or worse, genuine tears because they thought it meant he no longer loved them. But now that warning sensation was really pounding. He was sure he missed something. Or he made some kind of unforgivable mistake. He went over and over in his head the interaction they had so far, the fight with Doflamingo that he witnessed. He had even used his brief reprieve to also ask Tamago for any new updates collected about Straw Hat Amai since he had left to retrieve him. Unfortunately, there wasn't much, as his mother had deemed it unnecessary to waste resources anymore on this, since they already had him in their grasp. Or near enough, as the Vinsmokes would be bringing him. Nonetheless, he was impressive for a greenhorn. Really, he had built himself from the ground up without the support of his famous lineage behind him. As much it hurt Katakuri to admit it, some of his siblings, even with all the support of Whole Cake Island and the Charlotte name backing them, would not be able to achieve half of Amai's accomplishments, especially at his age. Some of them would not even consider doing some of the things he did. In fact, impressive was putting it lightly. Maybe this was why the thought of his brother was making him restless and uneasy? True, they were a big family, and this was a unique situation. Never before had an adult sibling been added so abruptly into their midst. They had all grown together knowing their place in the hierarchy of the Big Mom pirates, and what they had to do to move up the ladder. And now their newfound brother, a part of the worst generation, a captain in his own right, and who had just defeated one of the 7 warlords, was going to throw a wrench into their hierarchy. Just like he had with everywhere else he had gone before, and no one, not even Mama, seemed the wiser. He was sure his siblings would try from the start to put Amai in his place, and Katakuri was pretty sure it would not go their way. Moreover, he was also pretty sure that as usual he would be the one stuck keeping the peace. Nonetheless, while these were valid concerns, he could not ignore the sensation that whatever it was he was missing was more than this. The look on Amai's face as he left him, blank face and narrowed eyes, humming all the while, kept coming to the front of his mind. Katakuri had learned the hard way what happens when he ignores his instincts. Still, he had no idea what to do about it. He just knew he couldn't bring his suspicions to his captain. For all that she could be ruled by her own emotions at times, Big Mom never put any stock in feelings. Well, with hunger being the exception. Or maybe it was just other people's gut warnings. Come in. Briskly he made his way in, and quickly presented his report on all he had witnessed at Dressrosa, transporting the two young men, and the drop-off. Mama was particularly interested in hearing about his fight with Don Flamingo. Maybe because she knew of his connections to Kaido? That was a good sign then. Showing her old cunning had not dulled with age. Even if this whole wedding plan was potentially risky, including possibly scaring away future allies if it got out that they had executed the Vinsmokes. Mama, about killing Pudding's wannabe groom. She indicated she was listening. Maybe we should let him live. It would be Izo was alive for the transition, and he is a part of our youngest brother's crew, and his bounty is not that bad. Mama nodded in agreement, and Amai seems to be pretty attached to him. Katakuri realized he had made a mistake as he said it. Attached? Big Mom repeated coldly. It wasn't a question anyone wanted to answer. The Emperor hummed as she gulped down another cupcake and then another. I know that the transition to a new family is a bit hard, even if it's to our perfect family, she mused aloud. Certainly some of my in-laws have struggled with it. Why not make Ideasure our little darling boy, don't you agree? Yes, Mama, having no other relationships would help make everything easier, so we'll dispose of Black Leg when the time comes. Yes, Mama, Mama, although we should probably keep it quiet to help lure Nico Robin in. Of course, Mama. This will be the tea party of the century. So many honored guests to arrive. But Mama, spoke up her homey bicorn hat sitting upon her head. Huh? What, Napoleon? Not just our guests. You sent those mailmen invitations to the Germa 66 to use too? Meh, it's of no concern, she waved it off. Whoever they are Amai send the invitations to won't make any difference. Oh, was that what Katakuri was concerned about? Not Amai himself, but the memory of passing on those special invitations to Princess Reiju after her brother and fiancé had disappeared into the castle. The quiet concern of who else could interfere if they misused them. Yes, that could indeed be a complication, but one he and the rest of his family would be able to handle for sure. A quiet word to Rook Beeg later about the matter should suffice for now. -00 to 0 zo. Okay, so we're in agreement to breaking into 4 groups, concluded Duke Inuarashi, him and his co-ruler acting as hosts of the meeting, and heading the long table all the major players were seated at. Marco will take the majority of the Whitebeard pirates back to their crew to inform Newgate of what's happening. Sorry again, sighed Marco, scratching his head. It's a shame, but Ace crashing into his sibling's wedding is one thing, while the 1st Division commander doing it will be taken as an act of warrior. Nah, come on, man, grinned Ace, you know you wanna. No, besides, isn't there one named Anana? You could offer to marry her and be 2 pineapples together, and I'll bet. Shizite, cut in Marco tartly, right, never mind. The second team, huffed Inuarashi in good humor, will go to Wano. Upon arrival, we'll plan and split up accordingly. Unsaid was how the minx knew the samurai already had a plan in play. Consisting of me and the dog, said Master Nekomamushi, the rest of our fighters, the samurai, Law, and Izo on behalf of the Whitebeard pirates. Excuse me, said Raizo, raising his hand. I would like to join the 3rd team. From what I've heard of Big Mom, my talents would be of use. Moreover, thanks to our allies I believe I can be spared. Sure, welcome aboard, grunted Zoro. Your presence will be appreciated, said Brook, ignoring the despondent looks from all the dog minks. While his murderous aura had been off-putting, they had all still been stalking him while licking their lips. The third group will consist of most of the fleet, led by Commodore Orlumbus, which will await just outside of Big Mom's borders with Haruden as his second. Arms crossed, the large man gave a firm nod of assurance. After his display in sinking the beast pirate fleet, none questioned his credentials. Haruden felt no resentment at being excluded, accepting the realities of his size. Besides, he was betting decent odds he would be needed to help his savior still fight free of the Emperor's domain. Hopefully the rest of his crew would be able to join him in time. Making a sweeping gesture at the remainder, Nekomamushi said, while the final group will be the rescue party for Straw Hat Luffy and Sanji. Hardened fighters and killers all, the rest of the group still had to repress a flinch at the spike of bloodlust from the rookie crew. Ahem, accompanying the Straw Hats will be some of our guys. Pedro, Carrot, and Milky. Really? Gurgled Chopper in shock at the last name. Yes, confirmed Nekomamushi. She can use the trip to teach you more about our medical science. Sure. Surprise made the Straw Hats, particularly Robin, shoot their youngest member loaded looks. Good, said Inuarashi, as well as Raizo, Ace, Sabo, Koala, and Hack. If anyone asks, this is an attempt to gain information on her own intelligence network, deadpanned Koala. Beside her, the yellow fishman rolled his eyes, having previously been helping watch over the ships below. Because the Revolutionary Army could not be seen fully endorsing pirates, any pirates, after all. Moreover, while they had not said anything, the others at the War Council had a feeling the trio were skipping out on a major operation against the world government, especially with the reverie happening shortly. Or at least hastening to return in time to participate in it. Members from Dressrosa, Kairos, Viola, and Rebecca. The three family members gave proud smiles, their conviction overruling any fear. And finally, the other captains allied with the Straw Hats and their flagships. Bartolomeo, Cavendish, Don Sai, Idio, and Leo all shared wicked grins. Are we all in agreement? Asked Inuarashi. Any questions? Just one, said Law, arms folded. Have you learnt yet how the beast pirates found Zoe? To his surprise, instead of one of the minks, or some of the more vicious pirates you would expect to be convincing their captives to talk, it was Viola who answered. No, she said calmly yet with supreme confidence. None of the survivors were important enough to know. They did not even know where they were going, or who they were fighting, until they arrived. I see. Before we part, grinned Nekomamushi, sunlight glistening off his fangs, and on cue a bunch of minks came forward to offer full tankards of Zoe's finest ale. A toast. May we all see one another soon in Wano, and 2 members richer. To victory, they all howled to the heavens. -00 to 0 Wano Flower Capital Docks. Late, Kiyoshiro, said Sasaki with a warning look. My apologies, Sasaki, said Denjiro, wearing more subdued clothing than usual for this clandestine meeting. However, he knew his friend would have noted how scruffed they were, and his signature pompadour messed up. As I was heading towards the rendezvous, I caught sight of Yoshimitsu Kozo, and gave pursuit. Once more however they evaded my capture, and my attempt was public enough I had to establish an alibi for why I was out to dissuade any questions, including backtracking to my place as if turning back in for the night, which took me longer to come here. His explanation was met with silence which dragged on, and Denjiro fought the urge to sweat, until with a grunt Sasaki said, fair enough. He grabbed a bottle of sake from out of sight and tossed it over to the Yakuza boss. I'll pass on word on why you're late, should be fine. Success. Thank you, Lady Hiyori, for your help. Without further ado, Denjiro took his seat aboard the vessel, and they set sail for Onigashima. -00 to 0 Peru. This is the sound of a den mushi ringing. A den mushi ringing anywhere in the world was not something to raise an eyebrow over. Even though it was a commodity that not everyone could afford. Peru. This den mushi which was ringing was very standard, roughly the size of a regular house cat. Peru. So why was its continuous ringing making everyone anxious? A crowd of people staring at it uncomprehendingly. Has it ever rung before? Nah, I thought it was just for show. Should we answer it? I'm not touching it. Nope, not me. Stop looking at me. Maybe it will stop if we ignore it. It's really annoying. Someone answer itir anxiousness was maybe because it was attached to an unfamiliar den mushi, or maybe because of where it was placed. Within a very fancy-looking box, in a dusty room. Inside of a ship. A pirate ship. A very famous ship. Maybe we should call. Benny? Excellent idea. Yeah. The pirates continued to stare at one another. Who's going to call him? Nobody answered. Fine, I'll go tell Usopp to tell him. They all nodded. Finding Usopp was not a problem. Dragging him into the room and explaining everything also wasn't a problem. On the other hand, him understanding what to do, well. Hiccup, so you want me to call Benny, Hiccup, cuz the new den was, ringing, oh right. Old, no. New, oh, right, unknown den. You were too Hiccup afraid to answer. It wasn't going too well, especially since by the time they had gotten him, it had gone silent. Usopp took a swig from his bottle. The den's not ringing, so the problem solved itself. A few others whispered to each other. Whose idea was it to call Usopp? Your idea, genius. It isn't Godfather, but goddammit. Finally someone loudly asked him, but what if it rings again? Answer it, said Usopp dismissively as he began staggering to the door. Purapuru Usopp looked at everyone expectantly but no one moved. The drunken officer sighed exasperatedly, and made a show of moving slowly as he stumbled to the den mushi and slowly picked it up. The Godfather speaking. Why I am a Godfather? Cuz my son is God. Ha 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 ha. As one the gathered crew mentally facepalmed. When would their sharpshooter get into his head that the joke had gotten OLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLLL brighten up, his mocking face becoming serious. The eyes that made him the greatest marksman in the world sharpened. His voice as he ordered them to bring shanks made them trip over each other as they fled to find their captain. -0 Hawkeye, what a pleasant surprise, said a cheery and slightly sloshed Shanks. Even without you being physically here, you make my crew stumble around scared. But if you're going to make them stumble around either way, you should just come to visit us in the flesh. We just received new barrels of sake from, wait, East Blue? What? Wait, a wedding invitation. Wait a second, so it's true. Damn it, so Lilin not only kidnapped Luffy but she is marrying him off as soon as possible. That old hag, hey, just a second, how do you know about this? Beyond what was in the papers, I mean. Did the Marines find out about it? Do they intend to send the 7 warlords? What, you were invited? By the male fruit? Of course I was also invited. Yeah, ahem. Just second. Benny, we did receive an invitation, right? To the wedding, right? Ben Beckman appeared at the door puffing a bit of smoke, shaking his head. We should receive it any second now, of course you'll see me there. Oh, if I wasn't going to receive an invite, I'm sure you would have taken me as your +1. How sweet. Oh Hawkeye, you are making tears appear in my EY. Wait, why's it's good thing that you wouldn't take me as your +1? You already have a +1? Who, from East Blue and a mother figure to Luffy? Hey. Makino. Are you taking Makino as your +1? Hello? Hawkeye. Answer me, Hawkeye? The captain of the red-haired pirates calmly put the receiver inside of the shell. Ben, he said without looking at his still-waiting first mate, prepare the men. We are going to a war, not to a wedding? To both. What happened? Hawkeye kidnapped Makino. It sounded like he was taking her to a wedding as his date. Benny. In a secret Navy base. A commander and common sailor were racing to the communication room. Is it confirmed? Yes, sir, managed the sailor, conscripted into being a messenger. We were able to confirm a secret transmission between an emperor and one of the 7 warlords. We only got about half of it, but he did not elaborate further, too short of breath. Who? Were we able to know what it was about? The grunt did not bother answering as they had just arrived at the room. The commander flung open the door to the usually lively and bustling room to be greeted with dead silence. The commander gulped, wondering what they had heard. Another war? An assassination attempt? Someone's death? WHO? What could they have possibly intercepted to make them like this? Marines, he called, his voice slightly trembling, report. Silence greeted him, some even were blankly staring at him. He was about to repeat his command, trying not to make his voice squeal, when someone burst out shouting. Red Hair and Hawkeye are getting married, oh oh oh. So when Caesar Clown first heard he was with the team that would be heading into Kaido's territory, he was overjoyed, openly mocking his captors on how soon he would be rescued, only to suddenly go dead silent when he heard where they were going, straight to Wano. Honestly, everyone was too relieved to question why he had shut up. It was much more preferable to leave him just sitting there with a blank look upon his face. Until half an hour later, when he snapped and started screaming incoherently in a panic, raving and screeching about smiles and snakes and other nonsense until he was sedated, beaten unconscious, by Chopper. What? The reindeer had been enjoying a very pleasant conversation with Milky until they had been interrupted. -00 to 0 Onigashima. A small party was in full swing upon Denjiro's arrival. By the looks of it, in one of Kaido's private rooms. He had met most of them before at last year's Fire Festival as some of the higher-ranking headliners, members such as Brissola, Poker, Hamlet, and Speed. The Flying Six were also in attendance, with Sasaki moving to join Who's Who, ex-Drake, Ulti, and Page One on the side, enjoying comfortable seats, sake, and fawning men and women. In the background was another familiar figure, except not one Denjiro had met in person before, which he suspected was likely for the best given those sharp eyes and leering smile which made even his heart and stomach twist. Rising above them all, though, was the undisputed lord and master of the beast pirates. The strongest creature on land, sea, or air. One of the four emperors of the seas, and the murderer of Lord Kazuki Oden. Kaido of the beasts. Recognizing the peril he was in, his mind slipped into the familiar, calm readiness of battle. Even if Yasudora remained firmly sheathed at his side. Kiyoshiro, said Kaido cordially, for all that his glower marred his face. Despite the cup of sake in his hand, and the oversized bottle Black Maria was holding beside him, his eyes were sharp and shrewd, which raised Denjiro's already considerable concern a few more notches. Like this, the monster was easier to predict or be reasoned with, yet also far more perceptive. Lord Kaido, he said, bowing down. My utter apologies for my delay. I pray I have not grievously offended you. With a grunt, Kaido took a sip, before shaking his head. No, your reasoning was sound enough, and you respected my main intention. Thank you, said Denjiro, now letting himself straighten up even as he willed his muscles to not tense up. Far from being reassured by the acceptance and slight warning, he noticed none of the mocking he had expected from the Flying Six, and Sasaki had refused to say anything while they had sailed over. Even Ulti was uncharacteristically quiet, nursing her own cup of sake. Whatever this was, Kaido was keeping them all on a tight leash. How might I be of service to you? For another moment Kaido eyed him balefully, however he caught a hint of amusement and appreciation. Apparently the titanic figure had caught his nervousness, and knew the why of it. Instead, though, he offered the Yakuza a drink, which he politely accepted. At a gesture, Denjiro took a seat as well across from his host, and took a good sip from his regular-sized dish. Ah, quality stuff as usual, he complimented. Ignoring the remark, Kaido said, what do you know of the state of my forces? Only what Orochi deigns to tell me, admitted Denjiro carelessly, the omission of Lord, a statement in itself. Or what I can gauge from being out in the streets. You only send in one of your Flying Six at a time these days. In one smooth motion, Kaido tipped back his cup and downed the whole thing. Promptly Black Maria filled it up again, only for him to repeat the gesture. Darkly and with a trace of his fangs growing, the Emperor growled, my forces have taken a beating. Jack is dead. Dead as King and Queen have been. Wisely Denjiro did not say anything, and thanks to his ancestors that his sheer surprise at receiving such a frank admission concealed any of his personal satisfaction. So, continued Kaido, and the entire room trembled with the rage of a conqueror denied his due. Of what wash is being taken from him, visibly restraining an urge to lash out at the world around him. Ah, so that's he, everyone's keeping quiet, Denjiro thought a tad hysterically. I want you to join my crew. The world slowed to a crawl. Oh. Mentally he kicked himself for not foreseeing this possibility when he knew how weakened the Emperor's forces had become. If he did this, he would truly become a hidden knife at the side of the true calamity which menaced all of Wano. The odds of their victory, their vengeance would skyrocket. In proportion to the risk of having to do so all while directly under the noses of the beast pirates. To say nothing of how much more complicated it would be to protect Lady Hiyori. Nonetheless, for better or worse, this was not something Kiyoshiro would ever pass up on accepting. Nor was he sure he could. Kaido was hardly known for accepting refusals. The ultimate fates of the loyal daimyos came to mind. Motion to the side caught the attention of his nerves, and he flickered a glance towards the headliners. None of them moved again, yet it registered anew for him how the majority of them, including Sasaki, had been less recruited, and more beaten into submitting to Kaido. Only afterwards finding some measure of loyalty to their governor-general afterwards. However, Kiyoshiro was being asked to join. There was opportunity here, and he would be a poor Yakuza boss to accept an offer blindly. Carefully he put down his cup, and managed a careful balance between firmness and respect as he said, "May I ask a few questions?" "Yes," said Kaido flatly, taking a deep sip. "You're the true ruler of Wano," he said bluntly. "However, I am Orochi's dog, and my impression was that you needed him to manage Wano." "For now," said Kaido, expression unchanging, and honestly that was all the more terrifying. Either the man was just simply expecting Kiyoshiro would join one way or another, or he was planning to murder a man he had laughed alongside, and shared drinks with for years. Hosted parties for one another. Called Orochi his friend and patron before large crowds. No, it's both, he realized. Even if I refused this offer, and he let me, Kaido's already planning to kill Orochi like the snake he is. Then he'll make all of our shogun's followers, myself included, swear fealty to him or die. Some of this understanding must have shown on his face, given the smug sneer Kaido shot him before he schooled his features. Fortunately, his smooth tongue had not deserted him as he answered back without hesitation, "But not tonight." The cruel curl of Kaido's lips stretched further. "Not tonight. We can talk about that more later." Maintaining his composure, Denjiro nodded. "All right, but if I join," there were scoffs from both sides which were cut off at a coldly furious glare from their emperor. "How would that be handled? Especially as part of my value to you lies in the respect people hold for me. If I break my word of honor, all other vows and bargains become suspect." "I will tell Orochi I am in need of your assistance to guard the borders of Wano," said Kaido, regaining his vicious smile, while giving praise to how strong his grip over the men and women of Wano is. "That we don't need to worry about keeping the peace there. Your joining me will be held in regard, and proof of his own commitments. No one will dare besmirch your honor." The Kurozumi's rule was not that firm, and Kaido had to know that. Orochi knew it. With his fear of ghosts as Kiyoshiro liked to mock him behind his back, even as loyal a dog as he was. Which meant that whatever was happening would occur sooner rather than later, within a year at best. For the first time, one of the Flying Six spoke up, as Black Maria rested one hand upon Kaido's shoulder while leaning forward in a manner which emphasized her cleavage. "I'm sure our darling Kamurasaki can also help convince him," she purred, "and my girls and I will also reassure him." Despite even his iron self-control, once more Kaido must have perceived some of Denjiro's feelings on the matter as he raised a placating hand. "Within Onigashima, all of your people will be under your protection. The members of the Flying Six do not harass the direct crews or followers of one another." A good play on Kiyoshiro's legendary protection of his adopted crime family, while also removing them, especially Lady Hiyori, from whatever might happen on the mainland. "Not all of my people are fighters," he pointed out. "Some would have to remain to maintain their businesses and our hold upon the underworld. Including some enforcers. All with the risk of Orochi ordering petty attacks against them in retaliation. You can make some appearances to remind people who they belong to," said Kaido dismissively, "as well as to make your own reassurances to Orochi you remain his loyal dog even at my side." Finally, and Kaido reached behind himself to bring forward a chest, "To elevate you to one of my Flying Seven, I would present you with this." He lifted the lid to reveal a devil fruit. An actual one even, not one of those smile abominations. "A zone?" he managed to say, hazarding a guess even as his pulse elevated. "Of course," grinned Kaido, all teeth on display. "I see." Seeing the smile disappear, He hurriedly raised both palms. Offense is not my intention. No, growled Kaido in warning, and now Denjiro realized he should have worried more about how much alcohol the pirate had drunk before H's arrival. As I appreciate the power offered, my hesitation is from what I've witnessed from the smiles. Intellectually, though, I know this is a proper fruit. At that, the frown eased, and the emperor nodded in appeasement. It was even partially the truth. In reality, though, the thought of ingesting such a thing from someone he hated, that would twist and change his body beyond what his own rage had already done, filled him with sick revulsion. A feeling of violation. For Wano. For Odin. For Hiyori. Knowing he was testing his limits, he bowed forward so that his wig was pressed against the floor, and his hands planted down. Lord Kaido, your reassurances and offerings have swayed me. I am yours to command. Excellent, grinned Kaido. However, he remained sharply observant. Is there a but? Before making it public, may I please have some time to prepare my operations throughout Wano, as well as to coach Kamurasaki on what is expected of her? With Queen dead, Lady Hiyori should be safer from any advances here. The trick would be ensuring Orochi did not press the issue when faced with the chance of losing her. Moreover, they had to handle the matter of Yoshimitsu Kozo. If the master thief disappeared at the same time Kiyoshiro, a man infamous for being perpetually tired, left the flower capital, suspicions would be raised. Thankfully, these at least, or near enough, they had some contingency plans for. As Kaido continued to play at Bainted, acceptable, he grunted, gulping down another cup. How long do you need? I honestly have no idea, he admitted. But I shall leave right away, and have a firm answer for you before tomorrow. I mean, this evening, he corrected as he recalled what time it was. Bah! Nonsense, he tensed up before Kaido continued. First we'll have a party to celebrate your joining us. Ah, of course, and now Denjiro felt safe to raise his head and show Kiyoshiro's infamous grin. How could I have thought otherwise? Ha! Don't fret. It's good to have such a diligent dog on my side. Stay and relax, enjoy your new home. The honor is mine, he managed before Sasaki came up to give him a hearty slap on the back, and a warm welcome to their elite group. -00 going Luffy senpai. I'm confused Captain, I thought we're going to save Luffy, not this whole wedding thing. Those of the Barto Club and a few others that Captain Bartolomeo had deemed worthy were gathered to plan Luffy's wedding. As the best man, Bartolomeo was taking charge. As it should be. Ahem, what will happen if we arrived to save Luffy senpai and he still wanted to have a wedding? Huh? What we will do then? How can we face Luffy senpai if we're not prepared to celebrate his wedding with open heart and teary eyes, and mouths full of praise and happy squeals? Bartolomeo paused in his speech, but everyone was transfixed staring. I refuse to be caught unprepared for such a momentous occasion. What moment we mean? Someone whispered. I'll be so embarrassed if we arrived there and as the best man I let all those obstacles stop us from celebrating a once-in-lifetime occasion. It'll be history. People in the future are going to speak about the Pirate King's wedding, and I will not let it be said the wedding was anything less than perfect. Are you with me, men? Yeah. Damn right. It's gonna be the mostest Momotui SS ever. In the corner of the room, their honored guests Usopp and Robin watched, one amused and the other panicking. Shouldn't we stop this? Why? It's so much fun. Moreover, Robin needed something to help distract herself from the shadowy whispers of what she would do if there was a single scratch upon Luffy's head. Someone in the crowd tried to ask something a few times, but the cheers were too loud, so he finally shouted loud enough to be heard. Captain Bartolomeo, I have a question. Shut up. You, speak. What if Captain Luffy didn't want to marry? Then it'll be good preparation for the future when Luffy senpai does marry. It'll be a trial run. People nodded their approval. Their captain was so smart. Okay, raise your hand if one of you lot was in a wedding before. The reformed, mobsters all looked at each other. What, no one was in a wedding before? What about you, Captain? I was too busy with work to attend any. Gambia, you're the missionary of Luffy senpaiism. That means you've studied how to do weddings, right? Well, shrugged his first mate helplessly, while I did threaten that priest into ordaining me, it didn't come up. I was too busy preaching to him about the holy path of Luffy senpai. Alright, Fair enough, conceded Bartolomeo reasonably, not like we'd anticipated this. Someone hesitantly in the back raised his hand in the back. When I was a little, I was a flower boy, at a wedding for my aunt. Huh? What's a flower boy? Were you made from flowers? No, I had flowers, and I had to scatter them in the air and floor before the bride walked down the aisle. His eyes were downcast and he was shrinking into himself, afraid of their reactions. He should have kept his mouth shut. He was going to be beaten in. That's so cool, scattering flowers, of course. What kind of flowers? I think our roses. They were red and pink. I need someone on flowers. Find me flowers and roses. On it, Captain. Wait, only the bride. What about the groom? Yeah, if the bride gets flower petals, the groom should get something better. I think it was for both. Peering to get a better look through packed mess of men, it finally clicked for Bartolomeo which one was talking. Alright, so Cain here, pointed Bartolomeo at the still shrinking young man, is in charge of the planning. You lot better help him. Cain, I'm trusting you to plan it perfectly. Yes, sir. Cain found himself standing tall, as all of his crew were looking at him with newfound respect and appreciation. Someone was finally trusting him to do something, and his family told him he would not amount to anything, he would show them all. He knew he chose right when he joined the Bardo Club. He will follow Captain Bartolomeo to death. Now, who's good with writing? I need to write a speech. What? Huh? Why? Apparently the best man needs to give a speech. About what? I am not. Cain, what's the speech about? Sir, yes sir. It's about the groom, about how good he is. The best, he rules, the future pirate king. Amen. What else? Memories together, and what you wish for him in the future. I see. Good job, Cain. I need to think about this. Bartolomeo-san. Robin Senpei. The whole room quieted down, as they stared adoringly at one of their idols. A goddess in the flesh. What if Luffy wants a divorce? With that parting remark, she left, with Usopp scrambling after her, but not before she heard her #1 fan shouting. Men, we are also preparing a divorce party, oh. Whole Cake Island Whole Cake Chateau Palace. While some of the siblings were still busy with cleanup of their mother's latest rampage, others were gathered to discuss the latest attraction, their newfound brother and his triumphant return to the midst of his loving family. Katakuri is still with Mama, greeted Scribe Charlotte Montdor impatiently as he entered the room, having just returned from the cleanup site. No one took offense to the rude greeting, as the Minister of Cheese was known for his short temper. Yeah, the briefing is taking too long. Marble murmured in agreement as the long-arm human hybrid sat sandwiched between her quadruplet sisters, cleaning her pistols. No, it isn't, you're just impatient, her youngest quadruplet, Maple, fired back. I am not. You just want to hear his thoughts about our new brother, said the elder quadruplet, Mobile, knowingly. He was frowning as he sipped a glass of red wine, but no one was sure if it was because he didn't approve of the wine, or if it was just for the heck of it. His siblings called him Frowny behind his back, or the second coming of the pirate Empress Boa Hancock, as his usual pose was to raise his long pointy nose and look down at everyone. Except at Mama. Maybe because he wasn't tall enough, or maybe his survival instincts did work somewhat after all. Newly discovered brother, he was always our sibling, corrected Compote, the eldest daughter and second child of the Charlotte family. She held the title of the Minister of Fruits, and was known for her calm and serious demeanor, as well as her strong resemblance to their dear Mama. Yeah, whatever, dismissed Daifuku, the Minister of Beans, and triplet brother of Katakuri and Oven. His abrasive and violent nature was shown clearly with his next words. He's just a wannabe pirate. We'll have to teach him how to be a proper pirate. A big mom pirate. Damn right. It isn't his fault he wasn't raised right. It'll be our job to correct his upbringing. Oven, Minister of Baking, corrected as he gave his triplet a disapproving look. Even without meeting his newfound brother, his proactive and protective nature was rearing its head. He did beat Crocodile, and challenged the WG, pointed out Cracker, Minister of Biscuits and one of the top commanders in the crew. His comment raised eyebrows, but he didn't seem to notice. It was unusual for him to be outside of his suit of biscuit armor that he devised using his Bisu no Mi Devil fruit. But that wasn't what had EARWS. The brat that liked to brag about himself was somehow bragging about someone else's achievements. Not that anyone dared to say any of this out loud. He had earned the right to brag. Even if Katakuri had told him more than once that his arrogance and underestimating his opponents may be his downfall, Cracker paid him no heed. A few of the others murmured their agreement. "Not so bad," Oven said approvingly. While Daifuku declared loudly, the croc's weak. "You are forgetting that he challenged Mama," pointed out Cinnamon, the younger triplet sister of Smoothie and Citron, and a long-legged human hybrid. Her sister Smoothie, one of the 3 sweet commanders and the Minister of Juice, didn't hide her astonishment at her sister's comment. Cinnamon had a dismissive attitude to all men, even her own brothers. Cinnamon just shrugged, sensing her sister's look. "Uea, he ate her candy fa," said Opera in a nonchalant manner. He was the Minister of Whipped Cream. Smoothie snorted. While others may have been fooled by his detached attitude, she knew that his comment was a calculated move, as he was analyzing everyone's response. Their newfound brother was already making waves even before his arrival, and Opera was trying to stir things in his favor. The pecking order was at risk. She should know, she had made a lot of waves herself as 35th child of the Charlotte family and taking one of the 3 sweet spots as the 3 sweet commanders. Formerly 4. She, Cracker and Katakuri served as Big Mom's top officers with the highest authority, reverence, and fighting prowess in the crew after Big Mom herself. Waves, indeed. Even the almighty Daifuku with his dismissive attitude was here, and waiting for their big brother with the rest of them to learn about Amai. Waves were coming, no doubt, the only question was how big. "He's got balls, I'll give him that, he's a moron." "Do you think Mama will forgive him now that she knows he's her son?" Fuyu Meg asked quietly, her reserved nature showing as she shrank down a bit when all eyes looked at her. Maybe because she was the youngest of her decuplets. All other 9 remained busy with cleanup. Still, she was sitting with younger members of the family, excluding the ones who were actual children, of course, of whom almost all of them were present. After all, they would be the most affected with the arrival of an older sibling. A silence filled the room as they contemplated the idea of forgiveness. The screaming rants their captain still threw at the mere idea of Lola, the promises of death and agents still hunting for their sister, and the beatings she inflicted upon Chiffon. Nah. No way in hell, it'll make it worse. Way worse, poor sod. Are we sure she's bringing him in alive? If it wasn't for the plan he would be dead meat. That's why Katakuri dumped him off with the Germa, declared Oven, as a warning and to create space. "What do you mean, create space?" Brownie asked with yawn. As usual, the lazy sod was dozing on and off while they waited. But still, here he was, waiting like the rest of them. More than few looked at him with disdain, which he ignored, or probably was too sleepy to notice. They wanted him to get used to the idea that he is part of our family and cooled tempers on his way here. Compote explained calmly. As the eldest, she always tried to keep the peace. Tisk should have dragged him here right away, Daifuku said in annoyance. A few others grumbled their agreement. They shouldn't have to wait to meet their brother. But the main thought running in their heads was that it would have been fun to throw him in the deep end right from the start. He was Big Mom's child, he would whip himself into shape, or he would end up as whipped cream and get gobbled up. Assuming Mama doesn't kill him, where would he be put to work? Under which division? Someone finally piped out, which opened the folds. "I can take him, I can put him to good use." "No way, he sounds like too much trouble." The higher ranking of the fold kept quiet while their juniors squabbled about how best to use Amai. Really, what they were trying to say was, this new addition is inferior to us. We were here first. No way he's climbing the ladder that easily. What about his crew? Are we getting rid of them? Or taking them under us? Someone else said. Truly he had to shout for his voice to be heard above all the racket. They had the old and newly released bounty posters of the crew formerly known as the Straw Hat Pirates scattered between them. Their intelligence division was a source of great pride to the Yonko crew. There was absolutely nothing which got past them. That was how they had learnt about his connection to Dragon after all. -00 to 0 Zo Ace and Sabo stopped to sneeze. Oh. Red Force Shanks paused in his panicked scrambling to sneeze. -00 to 0 Moby despite his best efforts, Whitebeard released a sneeze, and his fussing daughters descended upon him with further medication. -00 frustrated, Jinbei released a strange coughing sensation like he was trying to sneeze underwater. -00 Whole Cake Chateau Palace. As previously the Straw Hats had just been considered an inconsequential rookie crew stuck within paradise, most of the members had not really seen them before. A few of them are useful. I can take Zoro under my wing. He's one of the worst generation, right? Dream on, I called dibs. The others are meh. Well, not meh exactly. There are few interesting ones. I know Mama wants Devil Child, Nico Robin for sure. Amai will receive some brownie points for that. Maybe she won't kill him. Yeah. Everyone wants her. She's one of the few remaining that can read the poneglyphs. Why is she called a child? I mean, she's old, right? The name was given when she was 8 years old, and stuck. Still old. Hey, are you throwing shade on us? Calling us old? So you are old but not senile, you little shit, come over here and say it to my face. Nah, what about this Frankie dude? He looks like a cyborg, awesome. Robo2. While the younger generation were busy squabbling around, some of the higher ranking were whispering between themselves. Could he be the one? I don't remember right, but the blue hair is familiar, and according to the information he's some kind of shipwright. Why is that important? Asked Smoothie, who until now was content enjoying the show unfolding in front of her. Not sure, but Frankie might have worked with Tom, Oven explained, with a contemplative look. Wait, Tom? From Tom's Workers, the one in Water 7? Cracker piped in, finally interested again in the conversation. Even someone as self-absorbed as him had heard of the legendary shipwright. The one that built the Roger Pirates ship, the Oro Jackson. We had a few ships built there before his death. Are you sure that the boy was an apprentice with him? Yeah, he looks too young, Compote said, her voice colored with doubt. And even if he was an apprentice, what the hell could he have learned from Tom before he died? It's been more than 20 years. A few others nodded their agreement. Oven grunted aloud, we will find out soon enough, and with that the conversation died, while the ruckus continued to fill the room. I want him, oi, wait in line. I'm the elder. Yeah, told you not me HH, not completely. Hey, at least they have wanted posters, unlike you, loser. You don't have one either, I would take the pet, he's cute. No, I want him, me, his name is funny, Cotton Candy, Chopper. If he loves candy, then it was meant to be. This is paradise for any candy-loving creature. He is mine, no, mine. Swords were about to unsheathe, powers unleashed, and the door opened and the man of the hour entered. Katakuri wasn't surprised by who awaited him. Before the barrage of questions was to start, he calmly said, he defeated Doflamingo and without missing a stand left. Smoothie followed right after him, right about when the avalanche of voices descended. A tsunami. Her heart beat a bit faster. A toothy grin stretched on her face, almost mirroring the one she saw on her newly found brother's wanted poster. The coming days promised to be filled with excitement and thrill. -00 Onigashima. After dozing off 3 times in rapid succession, Denjiro knew it was his time to return to the flower capital. He had a lot of work to do after all, including getting a firm deadline for Kaido to remain in his good temper. On his way out, he paused to tell Sasaki he would put a call in later, and they came up with a quick code to use, where he would substitute how many days he would need by saying how many barrels of sake he owed the man for a bet. The burly man jested that he would still want those barrels, to which Kiyoshiro laughed him off. However, he did not take the direct route to the docks, wanting to clear his head a little first. Moreover, as he strolled down the hallways of the massive palace, he realized he would have to figure out where exactly he would move in here as his new space as one of the Flying Seven. Catching sight of an open window in one room, he hopped through it outside to take a moment to appreciate the rising sun to herald a new day. A new chapter in my life, he thought, gut clenching. I'll never have a greater opportunity, but we still haven't heard anything directly from Kinemon and the others, while I'll be directly under Kaido's watchful eye. Although hopefully the death of Queen meant they had been unable to make any more of those surveillance animals he knew used to prowl around all the time. Taking a few deep breaths, he continued on his way through the rocky terrain, only to pause at the sound of breaking stone. Curious, he changed directions to investigate, and discovered a very tall woman with white hair and the signature horns of the beast pirates breaking rocks with a cannonbow. Whirling around, she shot him a sharp glare which cut him off guard. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Oh, me?" he leered. "They call me, napping, Kiyoshiro, and who might you be?" Sternly she sheathed her weapon over her back before striking an eerily familiar pose. "I am Kazuki Oden." "What?" he stated, expression frozen, hiding the rage which threatened to rip itself out of him to make him tear out her throat like a dog for the mockery towards his beloved lord. Then it dawned upon him, and he forced himself to laugh. Ah, of course. Quite the joke on Lord Kaido's part. Her expression shaded into a tapestry of fury. "This is no joke of my father's." Once more in the last 24 hours, Denjiro's world was thrown upside down until he remembered some gossip he had overheard here and there from members of the Beast Pirates. About a son of Kaido, and how some treated it as a joke. That he was rebellious and kept on being beaten up by the man without learning his lesson. Some strange, offhand comments also now made more sense if there was some obsession with Oden. "Your master Yamato, the son of Kaido," he said carefully, somehow making her scowl deepen further. Eyes full of rage and defiance. "I cannot deal with this," he thought distantly. This was a mystery he would have to tread very carefully on, and at a later date. Right now, there had already been too much thrown at him, and too much he was responsible for. So he sketched a bow to be on his way. "If you'll excuse me, young master, what are those?" Yamato glanced down at the shackles around his wrists, before spitting out, "My stupid dad put them on to keep me here. They'll explode if I try to leave and be free." "To kill you," said Denjiro, and it was only having witnessed so many atrocities over the years he was forced to turn a blind eye to which kept his voice even. Registering for the first time the bandages and wrappings around the arms. More peeking through her kimono. A gauntness to her features which indicated trouble finding food. "Yes," Yamato growled, daring him to pity or mock him, and the reckoning he would bring down upon his head. With chilling certainty, Denjiro realized only now after nearly 20 tortuous years what sort of man truly ruled over Wano. For Kaido, everyone was either someone to kill or enslave, to dominate over one way or another. Even here in Onigashima, these men or women were no retainers, adopted family, or even friends. The only difference between the beast pirates and those prisoners they oversaw in the mines or factories was how their shackles were invisible ones. Only those powerful enough to earn Kaido's favor had any reprieve, and Denjiro had doubts even there, given what that monster was apparently willing to inflict upon his own flesh and blood. A servitude which Denjiro himself had just been forced into, while being spoken to as if it were a gift. His vision turned red as his decades-old wrath wrenched free from his control. It was only for a second before once more he won their old struggle, but the damage was done as Yamato shifted into a defensive stance, hand upon his club. No wounded, exhausted, and hungry, she was ready to fight for her life with an unflinching resolve. Kikunojo would appreciate this woman. Except right now she was a liability, having seen a glimpse of his true nature. Kaido's spawn or not, he could not risk everything upon her letting something slip. They were isolated from witnesses, and she had to die. Or he could do what his true liege would have done. What Oden would do. "My apologies, young master," he said with another bow of his head. "An unfortunate memory struck me while too full of sake. Please think nothing of it." Yamato frowned in obvious suspicion, yet he risked turning his back and walking away. While accidentally the pack of lockpicks he carried just in case slipped out of his robes and fell to the ground. Clearly distracted by tonight's events, Kiyoshiro failed to hear the sharp gasp behind him. He had a boat to catch back to the mainland before anything unfortunate happened. -00 to 0 going Luffy senpai, it should be at the end. No, at the beginning. End. Beginning. I said end. Jin. Ning. End. Beginning. Bartolomeo and Cavendish were staring each other down, as the pencils in their hands shattered in their grips. The men watching them didn't even bat an eye. It was kinda hard to be surprised by something that kept happening on repeat. It was the 12th time. 13th. Oh well, it wasn't their problem. They were sorely mistaken. Just wait until there were no pencils left to break, blood would be spilled. And be used instead of ink, of course. Kane, the manager of this whole affair, mustered his courage and went, "EHMMM. What? Speak up, man," snapped Cavendish. "Don't shout at him," barked Bartolomeo. "You're the one that's shouting." "What? I am not." "Hey, Kane, who is the one shouting?" Kane just blurted out, "Both." "Huh? Who, use it at the start and at the end?" "No, both of the captains shouted. It would ruin the importance." I hate to agree with this moron, but it should be said at only one point. The impact, the flow. Nami popped into the room dubbed Luffy's Wedding Planning Committee, and sat comfortably in the sweet spot between Chopper and Usopp. So what are they fighting about this time? Mum. Finish eating before answering. Yeah, don't choke on that cotton candy popcorn, Chopper. What will we do without our doctor? I don't know where Luffy's brother got these kinds of popcorn, but they're so good, Usopp said, munching on the grapes and wild strawberry kinds. Nami popped one in her mouth. "That's so sour," she muttered as she took one from Chopper's bag. "And answer my question." "Oh yeah, they're arguing about when to present Luffy as the next pirate king in the best man speech. I think it should be in the beginning," popped in Chopper. "Nah, better at the end. More impactful at the beginning." Luffy wowink about it. "Oh my, they are still going at it." An amused voice cut into the incoming fight. Nami sighed in relief, as it's never fun when you are sandwiched between two people in the middle of an argument. And for the sake of their crew's rep, she could not handle it her usual way. "Robin," she said in greeting. "Want some?" Usopp said to her without turning back to look, still watching the fight. A hand appeared on the edge of the bag, took a few, and popped them in her mouth. They are good. What do you think, Robin? Beginning or end?" Nami asked. "What about you? Just say it every other sentence. Luffy would love it," Nami murmured. "I wonder," Robin said in her usual tone, and then abruptly she called out, "Cavendish." Her voice, while still gentle, was firm and carried over, stopping the fight in its tracks. For a second, until it erupted again. "Robin Senpai. Nami Senpai. Oh my, our idols, they're here." A few of the fanboys with weak hearts fainted. "Robin Senpai, what do you think?" "You agree with me, right, me? You are aware of what the sentence says," Robin said, unbothered by the whole ordeal she had caused. The pirate prince scrunched his nose beautifully in confusion as he said it out loud. "Yes, that Straw Hat will be the pirate kin." He trailed off, and then turned over to the Bardo Club president. "Damn you, Bardo, it's all because you, dragging me into your mess. I am going to be the pirate." "So you concur that you are wrong, it will be at the beginning." "What? No, I am saying that whole thing, loser." "Hey, it's agreed. We will say that Luffy Sanapi will be the pirate king in the beginning." No, end, at the end, beginning, end." "You love your chaos, don't you, Robin?" Nami looked knowingly at her friend. Robin hummed mysteriously but popped another few popcorn kernels into her mouth. She said instead in appreciation. "How much did you pay for the bag?" "Oh, I get them at a special discount," cheered Usopp. "'Cause we're Luffy's crew. Ace give me them for 4,000 berries." "I paid 2,500 berries," Chopper piped up. "Wait, what?" "I heard they are selling them now for 2,000 berries, even less," Robin murmured thoughtfully. "What? How dare he try to lie and cheat the brave man of the sea, Usopp, unforgivable." "Unforgivable." The two jumped up and scrambled away, looking to avenge their honor as pirates. In their hurry, they left behind almost 2 full bags of pop. One was sitting on Nami's lap and the other one on Robin's. "Remind me to never ever get on your bad side. Oh. Onigashima, remember," growled Kaido as he looked out a window towards the docks below, and the ship being loaded for travel. "This is reconnaissance only. Find out who killed Jack and how, and report back using the Den and codebook. Only then will I decide what happens next." "I remember, sir," answered Huzu dutifully, hiding any irritation. He was not a loose cannon who needed repetition, but a former professional and prodigious spy. Even if he admitted that he was tempted to kill those responsible anyways, if only so that he could finally move up to fill the vacant spots left behind by the unmourned disasters. Especially as things were getting a little tense amongst the Flying Six. No, 7 now. Having Kiyoshiro join up made perfect sense to strengthen the crew, but Uzu was well aware it also created a faction within their numbers. The two brats did not count, but Kiyoshiro and Sasaki together would be irritating, and he suspected that Sourpuss X Drake would get along well enough with the Yakuza boss. Meanwhile, there was no way he was tolerating Black Maria's presence more than necessary, so that left out any team up there. Nothing serious would come of it, as Kaido would crush whoever got so noisy as to force him to take notice, but it was still a hassle he did not need. As if reading his mind, Kaido glanced down at him and said, "Any promotion will be dependent upon the overall success of the mission, not your personal accomplishments. Understood?" Carrot and stick right there, thought Uzu sardonically, even if he leered in appreciation. "Got it, sir." In and out, finding whoever it is who helped the samurai kill Jack. Because even he had to admit that was reason for concern. By all accounts, the red scabbards Orochi had warned them about should not have been strong enough to do the deed themselves, and anyone strong enough to do so was someone to watch out for. Especially if this was some opening stroke by the Whitebeard pirates to resume their war, with the old man wanting to go out in a blaze of glory. Still, with the vivre card of that ninja, they would pull it off, even if they had to track him back to Wano to finish the job before they destabilized the whole operation there. Hey, his only regret was not being there to see Kiyoshiro's face when he learnt the extent of what Kaido had planned for Wano. As much as he tried to portray himself as a dog loyal only to the highest bidder, the way he pampered his men, and failed to properly whore out his women, proved he was sentimental underneath it all. Would be a good wake-up call when he learnt the truth. Then he noticed some of the figures also heading towards their ship. TCH, them too? He scowled, and took a long draw on his cigarette. Grunting, Kaido waved a dismissive hand. "I don't mean any offense to you, but I want you well prepared. You'll keep them in line." Of course, he huffed. Itwash's ship after all. Even if they were manhandling aboard some smaller boats for sneaking around. Regardless, he was well aware some of those headliners had delusions about taking his place. Especially one figure built like a hippopotamus and covered in scars. Plus the likes of Apu did not scream stealthy to him. Just the opposite even. Well, no matter. He would fulfill the mission, and Kaido would not begrudge one or two of the lot not coming back. With a few parting words he made his way down to his ship, while his crew brought aboard the last of the supplies. So focused on their task, nobody caught one Kazuki Oden stowing aboard. Germa 66 within her private quarters, Vinsmoke Reiju stared at the white Den Den Mushi before her. The tall, slender woman was the very picture of noble breeding, and yet she could not deny the turmoil within her stomach. A sensible fear, she chided herself. As childish and impulsive as she is, all the New World knows she is no fool. Far from it, and easily provoked to anger and cruelty. Procrastination will only make it worse. Reluctantly she had to admit it was further procrastination, really. Initially she had had the valid excuse of how all their Den Den had been destroyed, or, well, eaten. Their recent reunion with the other snails which made up the Germa kingdom, however, changed that. Except there had still been a grace period before that when with their last remaining Den Den had still kept her silence. If pressed, she could argue that she had not called immediately after poisoning Judge because she had feared their position was not secure enough. That the surviving Den Den had not been a white one. So she had, well, stalled. Failed to secure another Den Den despite the resources available to her. While finding excuses for herself to be doing other things. Any excuses really. Of course, she had reassured herself they were very important things. Even if others might disparage them as busywork in managing her new kingdom, sending out additional invitations at Luffy's request, etc. Only now they were running too low on time for her to delay any further. Besides, better to do it now while Sanji and Luffy are busy and unable to distract me. It was not like she was doing this behind their backs either. They had expressed an interest in going through with the tea party, which meant at minimum the wedding was still on. No, as much as she loved Sanji, and, maybe Luffy, what with his kind demeanor, warm smile, and setting her free, it was still best to do so now while she had some space from them. Easily provoked, appeared inherited after all, and she did not want her fiancé saying anything rash. So she dialed a very specific number, and waited. A few moments later, her call was answered. The snail taking up an unfamiliar face. Yes? This is Queen Vinsmoke Reiju. I wish to discuss matters with the Charlotte family regarding the upcoming wedding between our nations, said Reiju smoothly. A pause as her words were digested, and then, one moment please. The Den remained connected, while its features settled back into neutral as she knew she was being passed to someone in authority. Hopefully not. Ma. Pushing down the trickle of unease at the no very familiar face, Reiju said, Charlotte Linlin. What a pleasure to talk with you. Ma. Reiju. Well now, isn't this a surprise? Did something happen to Judge? That should be Queen Reiju as she had introduced herself, and Big Mom was too shrewd to do that by mistake. However, the new monarch refused to allow herself to be provoked. My father suffered a fatal cardiac arrest. Truth. Currently my brothers aside from Sanji are in isolation, mourning him. A lie, twice over really. Her brothers cared nothing for their father's death, yet were hardly going to accept her and Sanji taking charge. A matter complicated by how their soldiers were conditioned to obedience towards their family as a whole, not them individually. When the final two had arrived however, they had grossly misjudged their odds. In a fair fight, Reiju was confident she and Sanji could have beaten Ichiji. Granted, his sparking red was a legitimate threat, even with her raid suit on, or Sanji's ability to wrap himself up in fire. Alas for her dear brother, it was anything but a fair fight. Since it turned out Luffy was not only faster and stronger than Niji, he was also immune to electricity. In short order it had become 3-on-1 for Ichiji, and that was that. Sanji had still not proven that he would not abuse his own raid suit for behavior unbecoming of his standing. If he really wanted to fool around, that was what they had all those maids and mistresses for. In the aftermath had also been when she had found herself in the position of possessing a perfectly operational white Den Mushi, and out of viable excuses for herself. I see, mused Big Mom. If she had not put all the pieces together already, she shortly would. I do hope there's no concerns about my darling little Amai? My fiancé still prefers being called Luffy, she said neutrally. Something I wish to continue for the sake of a happy marriage. A double marriage. The first Big Mom had ever offered. On the surface it was a reflection of the power and prestige the Germa 66 would bring to bear, elevating Charlotte Linlin above her competition. While in reality Reiju knew it was more of the older woman taking advantage of Luffy's recent prestige, and also providing a display of her own power and authority over her wayward son. That even if she had lost him for years, she could still instantly decree his fate on a whim. Not that Luffy recognized this, and one of Reiju's jobs would be ensuring that never boiled over onto them all. After all, as much as she wanted the wedding itself, regardless of her own long-term plans, she could not deny the advantages of the alliance itself. Rumbled the Emperor. For better or worse she did not comment on that. I do hope the circumstances of your ascension to the throne did not cause any unwanted damage. The cloning facilities are entirely intact, promised Reiju, as they were the primary reason why Big Mom wanted to ally with them. And our soldiers obey my orders. Luffy and Sanji had been disturbed by that whole reveal. However, ultimately they had been willing to leave it to her to settle as she desired. If possible however, continued Reiju, I was wondering if we might rediscuss the particulars of this wedding arrangement when we meet in person. But of course, cheered Big Mom as if she were well known for her willingness to compromise. Her reputation was anything but that. We're going to be family twice over after all. I'm glad to hear that, said Reiju with a touch of earnestness she hoped did not sound desperate. In fact, I believe it will be even more favorable than originally anticipated for the new family I'll be joining. Oh, and there was the avarice and now genuine interest peeking through. Again, Big Mom wanted them for allies, so she would not have retaliated too harshly, except it was still best to be safe than sorry. Ruling this nation entirely on my own is a daunting proposition, continued Reiju. However, with your son as my king under your flag, well, that seems better for everyone. Truthfully, she was not entirely clear exactly what Luffy was expecting to happen, yet this seemed the safest way for everyone. Especially if his crew did indeed party crash the wedding as he and her brother had hinted. Earning some good grace in advance would hardly hurt. Besides, as much as she enjoyed the luxuries of royalty, Reiju had little interest in fully ruling her kingdom. Especially as Judge had never truly taught her how, assuming it would pass on to Ichiji. If she was going into this marriage from a weakened position, it was in her best interest to, as privately as possible, acknowledge it from the beginning, and turn it to her advantage. Ma, burst out Big Mom. How fascinating. I do believe I'll enjoy engaging with you more than Judge. How fortunate for us both. Reiju bit her cheek to prevent herself from releasing a breath of relief. Take good care of my son and future son-in-law, Queen Reiju. We'll indeed talk further when you arrive. With a gotcha, the Emperor dismissed the call and her. Grateful, she slumped in an unladylike way and blew out a long gust of air. Thank goodness that's over. A sharp sound jolted her out of her thoughts, and she snapped upright, whirling around to identify it. Only to mentally kick herself as she realized it was just someone knocking on the door. Reiju, you doing okay? Called Sanji. You've been in there forever. Biting of her mouth, she registered that it was darker than she remembered, and wondered how long she had spent lost in her head. Shaking it to dislodge any further cobwebs, she called out, coming. Deftly she put the den in a drawer, and went to open the door. There she found Sanji there with a warm, infectious grin while wearing an apron and holding another one. I was going to do some cooking. Want to join me? Half-forgotten memories of them learning to cook from their mom wafted their way free, and she smiled back. Yes, I would. It had been a long time, too long, since she had done so last, yet she would not miss doing so with him again for the world. Spending time together like real siblings were supposed to do. Especially if it would further help her learn what kindness and gentleness were like. Besides, if she was to marry Luffy, she figured a refresher in food preparation in case of emergencies would be wise. -00 aboard their force, Shanks slouched at the table, cup in hand, his face a bright shade of red to match his hair. He hadn't stopped drinking since the call-in stages. Only the bravest of his crew sat around him. The others ran for their lives and sanity between stages 1 and 2, watching with amusement as he stared into his glass like it held the answer to life's greatest questions, the universe, life and everything. 42. His stages so far. At first come denial. This can't be happening to me. Then, why? Why? He can and I can't. And Makino. What the ever-loving white mustache, its beard, someone shouted. I mean I just can't picture it, Beanie. Makino with Hawkeye. What do they even talk about? Wine? Swords? His ridiculous life philosophy about balance? That hiccup, Roosterhead's got sharper swords than he does personality. I mean he doesn't have one. A what? A sword? Then, anger. Why is this happening? It's that overgrown hag's fault. That batshit crazy huge whale. How dare she kidnap Luffy and force him to marry? I should challenge Hiccup to a duel. That would show her, the pinky candy wrapper on legs. I shouted his crew, preparing to invade Whole Cake Island, before they froze as one. Chills running down their backs, and they didn't even need to turn around to see dear dearie Benny glaring at them. Wisely they sat back down, and thankfully Shanks never even noticed, and that wannabe rejected Dracula dares to call me and rub in it. Benny, am I this pathetic? Am I? Nobody said anything, but they all thought it, yeah. They will follow him to the deepest hell, through the calmest seas of East Blue, past the raging storms of the New World, into the heart of Impelled Down, and even beneath the crushing depths of oceans. But yeah, pathetic he was. Benny, where is your answer? Bargaining. I mean, my invitation was clearly lost in the sea. We can't trust the mail fruit? Right? Right? I should go, right? I mean, I'm the heart of the party. I need to go to the wedding. Wait a moment, we are pirates, it's in the fine print hiccup, we can crash a party. And anyway, Luffy doesn't want to get married, so we'd be doing him a big favor? Right. Right. And the walking birthday cake will be so angry. So angry, she doesn't like when lowly people like us crash her parties. We should go. I mean, what did the old man white mustache called her? A Yonko who's more of a dessert buffet. Oh no, that was the other one. Hiccup mistress of muffins. No. That's what I called her to her face. What was I talking about? Oh yes. Her cupcake pinky face would cry frosting. It will be so fun, and lots of hiccup pink. I love pink. I mean I hate pink. It's wash off red rules. And we will swoop in and save Makino from death by Bye. Depression. I thought we had a connection, Pinky, Luffy. How dare he? How? He invites gothic sword craze freak and not me, and +1. +1, I didn't even get a 1. All that time together. I give him my hat, my precious SSSSS. And he didn't even invite me. Am I not loved? Is it because of the hair? I know it's because of the cursed red hair. Nobody loves me. I am all alone in the world, la la la. His crew, ever faithful, did not correct him, just fulfilled their sworn duty, it's in the fine print, and sang la la la. Usually what would come after is acceptance, mused Ben. He tried to imagine his captain, one of the emperors of the sea, saying something like, I'm at peace with all of this, and almost lost his composure. Especially with Shanks sobering up, a bit. Not because he willingly stopped drinking, but because they were literally out. Even Usopp's not-so-secret stash was not spared, to the horror of the sharpshooter, I'm the godfather, how dare you steal my godly gifts? I can't go, Ben, Shanks muttered, his voice heavy with frustration. I promised Luffy. I wouldn't see him again until he became a great pirate. What kind of pirate breaks a promise like that? Acceptance? Really? Was the world ending? The Pirate King resurrected? Joy Boy's second coming? Ben Beckman calmly kept his arms crossed, and shook his head as he spoke over Shanks' rambling. It's not just about the promise, Captain. We're also worried about Big Mom and what she's planning. This may not only affect Luffy, but our turf. The people who depend upon us for protection. And don't want us provoking a war, went unspoken. Shanks blinked, momentarily distracted from his sulking. Big Mom. She kidnapped Luffy, forcing him into this marriage. It just doesn't sit right with me. He's like family. His voice wavered for a second before he quickly covered it, trying to down more sake from an empty bottle. Lucky Roo, lounging across the room with a grin on his face, snickered. You think the kid needs rescuing? Last I checked, Luffy can handle himself just fine. Usopp leaned back in his chair, took an all too brief break from his sulking to nod in agreement. Yeah, if anyone's gonna cause trouble for Big Mom, it's Luffy. He's not the kind of guy to sit around and play along with whatever plans the flamingo toddler wants. Shanks paused, his face serious for a rare moment. Luffy's journey is his own. I can't step in until he's ready. But, he trailed off, looking conflicted. Captain, maybe you could send someone else. You know, to keep an eye on things. Make sure nothing happens, Limejuice suggested offhandedly. Just then, the former newbie arrived back to the deck. Rockstar's nervous fidgeting was almost palpable as he handed the steaming cup of coffee to Shanks. Careful not to spill a drop. Careful, Captain, it's hot. Shanks blinked, staring at the horizon for a moment as if deep in thought. Though anyone who knew him well would recognize that slightly glazed-over look. He wasn't thinking about anything in particular. Then, suddenly, he straightened, like a lightning bolt had hit him. Yeah. That's it, he shouted, standing up so abruptly that his chair almost toppled over. He slammed his hands down on the table, shaking the coffee. Rockstar flinched, glancing at the cup like it might explode. Captain? Shanks grinned, his eyes wide with excitement, the drunk haze almost all gone. Benny, you'll go. Ben cocked an eyebrow. Me? You're the most level-headed one, Shanks reasoned, wobbling slightly but managing to stay upright. You'll be there to observe. Make sure Luffy's okay. But don't interfere. And if anything happens, well, I'll be nearby. 'Cause it's, as you said, a threat to our turf. Lucky Roo nearly choked on his meat, laughing. You, nearby, you really think you're not gonna intervene if something goes wrong, Captain? Ben going and leaving these mature and well-adjusted adults on their own. Yeah, that was a wonderful and reasonable idea. He did not bother addressing how that was also not what he meant regarding the islands under their protection. Captain. What about Hawkeye and his +1? Remarked Usopp, never letting a dead dog lie. Especially when his godly gifts were stolen from underneath his godfather, the name bringing another wave of frustration. The Hawk. That bastard. He called me just to rub it in my face that he's invited to the wedding and I'm not. And he's bringing Makino, my Makino. Without sharing a glance, most of the senior officers shared a brain cell. They decided to ignore that last bit. Most, but not all. Chuckling, Ben shook his head. Nikki knows her own person, Captain. She can go wherever she pleases. Besides, Mihawk probably only called to tease you because he knows how much you hate being left out. The funeral fashion bastard is rubbing it in. Offering me the +1, what a tease, Shanks finished with a pout. Funeral? Murmured Usopp. He hummed, it fits him, a funeral director, and he will have lots of clients. He would kill them and bury them, and then rub it in for them. He hummed and added, he would make a killing, literally. The others ignored him, while Shanks stared at him uncomprehendingly. Their captain was getting sober, but not that sober. With a huff, and shaking his head to dislodge Usopp's insanity, Shanks said, at least, if she is going into that hellhole of a place filled with monsters, having the sword freak would be best. There are worse people to go with. And Hawkeye will keep her safe. Right? His eyes seemed to ask. Suddenly everyone started to become frantic. Oi, Ben, you should get going. Hurry up, make sure nothing happens to our dear Makino. I'm not going, said Ben resolutely. Oh, somewhere in East Blue, near the docks. The usual calm of the sea breeze was absent, replaced with a tense, palpable unease that clung to the group gathered near the ship. The bartender, pale as a ghost and trembling like a leaf, clung desperately to a post at the dock, as if it were his last anchor to sanity. In the time since a certain wedding invitation had teleported into his bar, the man had seemed to lose weight at an alarming speed, and had been that color the whole time. We're really doing this, he stammered, his eyes wide with fear, darting around like Big Mom's forces could appear at any moment. We're sailing? Toher Island? Jill shot him a cold, dangerous glance, her smile never wavering as she addressed Rick, who stood beside her, no less anxious. Oh, we're doing this all right. And trust me, Rick, you don't want to be the reason we mess this up. Then, turning her mocking gaze to the bartender, her tone shifted into something almost sweet, dripping with false kindness. You could still back out, you know, of course. You probably wouldn't survive the night. But hey, quicker than facing Big Mom's wrath, right? There were several reasons why she had never bothered learning his name before, and this performance merely reaffirmed all of them. The bartender whimpered, clutching his head as if it might burst. I don't even know why she invited us. I'm nobody, just a bartender. What could she possibly want from me? His voice rose into a panicked squeak. I cursed myself. I knew it. The moment I said nothing exciting ever happens around here. Calm down before you faint again, Vin muttered, not even looking up from his notes. He was too deep in logistics, mumbling to himself about candy? Jill's grin widened, all sharp teeth and menace, as she blocked Rick's path with a lazy arm. Don't even think about running, Rick. I'd hate to have to chase you down. Her voice dripped with that same mock sweetness, but the edge of violence beneath it was unmistakable. Do a good job, or you'll wish the only thing you had to worry about was me controlling your personality. Swallowing hard, Rick's eyes flickering nervously between Jill and the distant horizon where freedom seemed so far out of reach. Defeated, he sighed. Fine, I'll go, alright? Just stop grinning like that. Chuckling, Jill patted him on the shoulder in a way that was far from reassuring. Good boy. Now don't screw this up, or you'll be swimming home. If you're still alive, that is. Vin, meanwhile, was absorbed in logistics, muttering to himself as they all gathered on the docks. Candies. What kind of candies? How much? Too much and she might expect a regular tribute, too little and she'll take it as an insult. His fingers tapped against his chin in frustration. Rumor has it she eats anything, not just sweets. Simple but satisfying. Maybe marshmallows. But where do we even get those on such short notice? And from which merchant? What if we insult her with the wrong kind? The bartender let out a desperate moan, slumping onto the dock in despair. I can't do this. I can't be part of this. We'll all be eaten alive. What if the candies aren't good enough? Or worse, what if we aren't good enough? We don't even know the rules of her party. What if we break them by accident? Voice shaky and filled with dread, Rick joined in. And what if we're late? The new world. It's a death trap just getting there. What if we don't make it in time? Without looking up from his map, Vin calmly traced routes. We'll make it. Barely. We have to. First, we sail to Fishman Island, then head into the new world. Reverse Mountain will be rough, But if we push the ship too hard, we're done for. Time's everything. And being late, that's a death sentence. As it is, if we're lucky we might arrive just the day of. Aaron, who had been hauling supplies onto the ship, overheard and chuckled darkly. Don't forget about the party rules. One wrong move, one wrong sneeze, and we're erased. So, be polite, punctual, and for the love of everything, don't piss her off. Rick grimaced. Isn't this a bit excessive? I mean, it's just a party. Grin flashing again, Jill's eyes locked onto him like a predator sizing up its prey. Rick swallowed hard and whispered to the still whimpering bartender, she's already threatened me about something weird with my, personality. I think I'm stuck here. You're definitely stuck, Jill said, her voice low and dangerous. And if you mess this up, Rick, you'll have more than Big Mom to worry about. I'll make sure of it. Rick shivered, not from the sea breeze, but from the icy fear that Jill instilled in him. He didn't know much about Big Mom, beyond the terrifying stories whispered about her. Tales of people disappearing, entire islands wiped off the map. He remembered as a child being told to finish his vegetables, or Big Mom would eat him for dessert. Still, at that moment, it wasn't Big Mom who scared him, it was Jill's cold, calculating eyes. Aaron turned to him, eyes wide with disbelief. Are you serious? We're going to Big Mom's island in the New World. Screw up, and it's not just us who die. She'll wipe our entire island out of existence. That was how they had been able to afford this, with the terrified inhabitants all chipping in to pay for the ship and passage once the invitation had been validated. Jill leaned against the railing, her gaze sharp as she watched Rick squirm. You'd better make yourself useful, Rick. If you mess this up. Her smile was pure malice. When Jill made a threat, everyone knew it wasn't a warning, it was a fact that just hadn't happened yet. Now looking positively green, Rick glanced at Vin. And, do we need formal wear? I don't exactly have a wardrobe for a Yonko's party. The entire crew turned to look at him like he'd just suggested they dance the tango with a turtle and the moon. Even the bartender, who was still curled up in his corner, groaned in disbelief. Rubbing his temples, an exasperated Vin said, that's another issue. Rumor has it she likes effort, but if you overdo it, she'll take it as an insult. Because it looks like you're trying to show her up or something. Anyways, we need something that shows respect without overshadowing her crew. Nodding in agreement, Jill firmly said, something simple. Aaron, make sure the clothes are clean. We can't afford to give her any reason to feel disrespected. With that, and seeing the crew had finished their preparations, she grasped the bartender's wrist and twisted it just right to pull him along in her wakone, else followed her aboard to meet their fate. The ship groaned as it began to move, the crew preparing to set sail toward the infamous Whole Cake Island. Nervous energy crackled in the air. The weight of Big Mom's reputation, the looming threat of death, and the uncertainty of survival hung over them like a dark cloud. Staring out at the vast ocean, pulse beating in his ears, Rick knew it was now too late to run. How'd I get roped into this? Once more releasing a dark chuckle, Jill's eyes drifted to the bartender, who was now curled up in a ball on the deck. Don't worry, Rick. Just make sure you don't pass out in front of Big Mom. You wouldn't want to wake up in her soup, would you? Behind them, the nameless bartender let out a pitiful whimper, rocking back and forth. Oh Kraken's mercy. What have I done to deserve this? -00 to 0 Germa 66. And that's why I'd still choose the One Piece over Beatles, but it'd be a close thing, concluded Luffy. How fascinating, said Reiju, resting her head chin on her hand as she leaned into him despite how they were already sitting in comfortable chairs beside one another. She really meant it too, which was admittedly unusual given how historically she had always either ignored bugs of all kinds, or squashed them for being icky, unhygienic, and just plain disturbing. Admittedly, it's probably the source, she confessed to herself. How about you, Reiju, any new hobbies? Well, she began, lips quirking into her usual coy smile. Although it felt more genuine these days, I've recently taken an interest in. A familiar knock at the door jolted her upright, and the sudden rush of the distance made her realize just how close her face was to his. Down girl, she warned herself, trying to ignore the blush dusting her cheeks. No need to rush anything. Besides, it'll make the wedding night all the more sweeter, she crooned to herself. Have we discussed the honeymoon with the Big Mom pirates? We'll need to discuss the honeymoon? Settling herself, she called out, "Enter." Dutifully, the door swung open to reveal Edgar, her personal and longtime manservant. Handsome and muscular, by all appearances he was another pretty piece of decoration like the ladies her brothers had around them. In truth, however, she had only accepted him because she knew it was expected of her. And better a spy she knew of than an unknown one. Years later, she could admit that his familiar presence was actually reassuring now. And not only was there no one left for him to report to, he knew all her preferences too well to dream of casually replacing him. "Queen Vinsmoke," he said with his usual formality. "You wished to be informed when the other heads of the newly arrived partitions had submitted their reports." The massive snails that assembled together to compose Castle Vinsmoke spent enough time apart, that managing the logistics of them all was an ongoing process. Moreover, it would hardly do to dispatch said reports over Den Den Mushi, and she had been waiting for the ones formerly under Ichiji and Niji's commands to send them all in. Contrary to expectations, Judge had always been given to procrastinating over reviewing the minutiae, yet she could hardly afford to do the same. Especially as there had been some damage inflicted while establishing her authority. But she should still have. She blinked as it dawned upon her how it was getting dark out, and a glance at the clock confirmed how much time has soared by while listening to Luffy speak. "Okay, I've got it bad." Coughing into her fist to once more regain her composure, she said, "Thank you, Edgar. I'll be in my office shortly." Air office, which was comfortable and familiar. Judge's former office now served as a new privy for the castle. "Very good, Your Highness," he said, exiting with a dutiful bow. As the door clicked shut behind him, she turned to Luffy to give her apologies, only to see him frowning slightly at her. Taken off guard, she froze with the words dying on her tongue. "You don't like it," said Luffy with absolute certainty. Confounded, she asked, "I beg your pardon? Like being called that?" "Oh, yes," she admitted. Or rather, I'd like being called queen, more than she had ever expected to, but just not Vinsmoke. Head cocked to the side, he said, "You hate your family that much?" There was no judgment there, and he had practically spearheaded the death of Judge, and the indefinite imprisonment of 3/4 of her siblings. Still, she should have expected this. "I pity my brothers," she admitted, "but there's nothing I can do for them. I honestly wish there was, but I don't know what to do to help them. They were born and raised as monsters, and I don't know how to fix that or save them as our mother did for Sanji." Moreover, much like her mother, she could not help loving them all the same. She loved them and locked them up in the same breath, and was up here living comfortably while she stripped them of their freedom. How messed up was that? Except what else was she supposed to do for them? In the meantime, however, the name Vinsmoke encompasses too much of a reminder of my old life. Shrugging her shoulders, she made a dismissive gesture. "I've never liked it, but I've lived my life enduring it, and I can keep on doing so." "You shouldn't if it upsets you," he told her bluntly, his face intense. Despite herself, her heart skipped a beat at seeing someone so defensive on her behalf. Genuinely defensive at that, and not because they were programmed and groomed to be that way. "Huh, wait, what was your mom's name? Her family name? Or both, I guess, but more her family one. Why don't you use that?" "Kato. Kato Sora," she answered softly. "It means ocean, where she came from. Sanji and I found it listed recently in some old papers." He kept blissfully quiet as she took a long breath to steady herself, and wiped her eyes at the memory of that discovery. Clearing her throat, she continued, "And yes, I could call myself Queen Kato Reiju if I so wished. Only my authority here is so dependent upon that family name. Our family legacy. As matters stand, it is my choice to keep Vinsmoke to make things easier given what lays ahead for us." The heavy emphasis broke through to him, and he reluctantly accepted it with a nod. "After all," she grinned once more, "that name has proven so useful for me of late to gain more pleasures than disappointments." The words, like our engagement, hanging inspoken between them. "Although what'll I do after the wedding? Monkey Reiju, Monkey D. Reiju, Charlotte Reiju, Charlotte D. Reiju, Charlotte Vinsmoke Reiju? Well, whatever I wear in public, just so long as I'm happy. And I can always refer to myself as Kato Reiju still in private where no one can hear. Or at least no one but Luffy and I." "I don't get it about the names," said Luffy frankly. "And Sanji just seems to be calling himself Sanji still. And he'll always be just Sanji to me. But if it makes you and Sanji happy, that's all that matters. Thank you, she said pleasantly. Unfortunately, this conversation also prompted her to remember a concern she had had. Oh, I really do need to go see those reports. Go be queen, he waved her off. Gotta make sure everybody's getting fed. Quite, but do you wish to pass on to Big Mom about the invitations we sent? Nah, and this time there is contempt there. Not towards herself thankfully, yet still biting and chilling the room. Very well then, she agrees. Besides, this is between equals, and she has hardly told us who she's inviting, so it's only fair. There was an odd look on Luffy's face at that, except she really cannot let herself get distracted anymore, so she bustles out of the room without another word. Unfortunately, distracted really does sum up her problem whenever she thinks of him, or is reminded of him, which is often. Moreover, she doubts preemptively consummating matters with him would make her any less lost in pleasant thoughts. It is not like she has anyone she can really talk to about this Aeoli library would have anything of use. Vast shelves full of thick tomes on warfare, politics, torture, biosciences, and other matters rather useless for her current concerns. Not that she would ever trust a source originally from Judge regarding functional relationships. Nor was Sanji an option either, as she did not really want to hear what he had to say about the matter. Given his typical attitude, she strongly suspected he was currently doing some deep repression at the thought of his captain and sister getting married. I think I'm falling in love with this man, but how can I really know? As she stalked down another intersection, out of the corner of her eye she caught various maids stopping to properly bow to her. Ah, of course. Oh, big news. Morgan's office. Morgan sat at his desk, stacks of paper and half-finished drafts scattered around him. The World Economy newspaper was his empire, and he ruled it with a sharp eye for the biggest scoop. He glanced out the window, the gears in his brain turning as he planned the coverage for Big Mom's children's upcoming weddings. It was going to be a massive event, and his people were going to be the first to report every juicy detail. The article in question written by yours truly. Usually he did not dip his beak into personally writing like the old days, except certain realities had to be acknowledged in a world that held the emperors. Still, it felt good to be back in the trenches. But then one of the many den mushi, all connected to a big white den to stop any unwanted eavesdropping, rang on his desk, breaking his concentration. Puru. He didn't expect this one to ring. But just because his mind was off thinking about pirates, didn't mean the Navy wasn't more than capable of whipping up their own news. Morgans picked up the receiver, gotcha, and the voice on the other end delivered something big. Boss, we've intercepted a message from the Marines, gushed the voice on the other end. They're talking about Shanks and Hawkeye. They think they're getting married. Morgan's eyes widened in surprise, and his signature grin crept across his beak-like face. Kawahahaha, big news. He didn't ask for clarification, or as any other amateur would ask, are you sure? Who cared about the truth in light of such a scoop like this? Leaning back in his chair, he weighed the risks. He was up against a Yonko and a warlord. It was also most likely not true. For such a big organization that ruled the world, Cypher Pol was the shit at actually gathering intelligence. Just look how easy it was for his group to eavesdrop and get all the juicy info. Morgan scratched his chin. Big Mom's going to be furious. But who cares? The world will eat this up. It doesn't even matter if it's true. I can save the confirmed wedding guests for later, once the dust settles. Obviously the world government would also be livid at him publishing their secret, except he promptly dismissed them as a concern. After all, they still needed him and his paper. No, her reaction was a more immediate concern. He spun it through the various angles in his head as he weighed the risks, until his grin widened as he made his decision. Publish it, front page. We'll run with the headline. Shanks and Hawkeye. The ultimate pirate power couple tie the knot. Kawahahaha. The steamy truth behind all their little spars shook the new world. Dueling with more than just regular swords. Kawahahaha. Let's spin the story. Make it sound like the Marines are preparing to strip Hawkeye of his warlord title because of this. And we can add some naughty speculation. Maybe they're rushing to marry because of Luffy's upcoming marriage being announced. Who knows? The readers will love it. Morgan snapped his fingers and his assistant began typing furiously. -00 to 0. The pirate wedding of the century, Yonko Shanks and warlord Hawkeye confirmed to marry. In an unexpected turn of events, the two legendary swordsmen, Yonko, red-haired, Shanks and Dracule, Hawkeye, Mihawk, the strongest swordsman in the world, are reportedly tying the knot. Our sources within the Navy have confirmed the news, with intercepted messages between the two pirates indicating that their relationship has been years in the making. The announcement has sent waves through the Grand Line, especially given the historical rivalry and mutual respect between the two. Shanks, the youngest of the Yonko, and one who holds his title despite a lack of devil fruit. Hawkeye, whose inclusion amongst the warlords alone justified the creation of the controversial institution. Now their lives have taken a spicier direction. Who would have thought these iconic swordsmen, who once clashed in battles that echoed across the seas, would take such a leap? The timing of this announcement comes suspiciously close to, mere days after, the reveal of Straw Hat, Luffy's newly discovered heritage and engagement, stirring further rampant speculation about the impact of the young pirate's meteoric rise. Instead of resting upon his laurels after defeating the warlord Doflamingo, his attention immediately turned towards the announcement of his wedding. Could this be a sign of a growing trend among the pirate elite to settle down? Or to forge alliances by marriage to escalate even farther? Did this surprise development convince Red Hair he needed to enhance his own forces, lest the high-flying rookie upstart come for him next? Is it preparation for the anticipated chaos of the aging Whitebeard's demise? Or is this all a coincidence of timing, and the wedding planning was already in the works before Dressrosa? The real question remains: how will this union affect the power dynamics of the new world? Shanks is already a Yonko, feared across the seas, and his influence spans the Grand Line and beyond, while Hawkeye holds the titles of the strongest swordsman and a warlord of the sea. Just them allying could threaten their rivals, or even challenge the world government itself to a messy fight. If their alliance is in fact more personal, then it might be free of the treachery and greed of traditional pirate partnerships. And while speculation about where they'll live or who their allies will be is swirling, there's no doubt this is more than a pirate wedding. It's a shift in the very tides of power, with their combined might set to shape the course of the seas. Could Shanks and Mihawk be planning something grander than mere marriage? Some say this union is simply the culmination of years of rivalry and respect. Others whisper of a mutual goal to carve a new path on the seas, be it of bloodshed or freedom. And who is to say it will stop here? Perhaps they are planning a still greater coalition that even the marine admirals would think twice about challenging? Which leads us to the second major question: how will the rest of the world react? Will the Marines strip Mihawk of his title now that he's aligning himself so closely with the Yonko, especially immediately following the stripping of the title of warlord from Surgeon of Death, Law and Heavenly Demon, Doflamingo? Is this a new trend emerging, or could it signal the end of the warlord system altogether? With the echoes of the last great war between the beast pirates and Whitebeard still reverberating through the seas, the world holds its breath as it watches, captivated by this historic union, wondering, could this be the beginning of a new era? Or just the calm before another storm? Stay tuned as we uncover more details about this historic union. -00 to 0 Morgan's office as the final, meticulously edited manuscript went to press. Morgans leaned back in his chair, satisfaction brimming in his chest. His staff were diligent, very diligent. Though facts could be a little flexible at times, grammar, phrasing, that was non-negotiable. Morgans had a reputation to maintain, and he'd always prided himself on his impeccable standards. He often boasted that as a child, he was called the grammar Nazi, a term whose meaning, amusingly enough, he never quite understood. A Nazi anyway? He'd ask, laughing. Tonight, however, he wasn't just reveling in grammatical precision. He knew the real reason for his glee. Big Mom would be furious. Her wedding was poised to be the event of the century, and now this news, Red Hair and Hawkeye, two legends of the seas, getting married, was about to steal her thunder. The world would be rocked. Teach her to yank him away from his work to her party with an unspoken threat of death. Still, Morgans was reckless, not stupid. As he twirled a cigar between his fingers, he called for his staff. "Make sure we keep the headquarters moving," he ordered, a sharp edge to his voice. "This time, I don't want any delays." His staff nodded, well aware of the routine. Morgans had designed the World Economy newspaper's headquarters to be mobile. A colossal ship, always on the move, with water wheels flanking the hull, and an enormous hot air balloon lifting it into the skies. Some of his staff had doubted the necessity of the elaborate setup, murmuring about overkill. Amateurs. All of them. That's why he was the boss. The trailblazer who had taken a small-time paper and made it into a global power in its own right. He smirked. Morgans was a genius. And tonight, that genius had angered not one Yonko, but two. A warlord, and the world government as well, along with their loyal dogs, the Marines. The thought of the chaos that would follow made his feathers ruffle with excitement. Of course, he had a plan. There was still a tea party to attend after all. Given a few days to cool down, Big Mom could be soothed with a few flattering articles about her weddings and parties, full of just the right amount of praise. It would be tricky, yet not insurmountable. Especially as clearly he had not intended to offend her. All an accident really. He had just been doing his job, nothing personal at all. The other mess? Well, that could be married to the Marines, so to speak. After all, he had published, quite clearly, that the source of his information was from them. If anyone was to blame, it wasn't Morgans. He always believed in giving credit where credit was due. Life was ever so exciting, and it promised to get even more so. Morgans couldn't wait to see it all unfold. Kawahahaha. Big news, he exclaimed, the grin on his face spreading wider. -00 to 0 somewhere in the New World at sea, Vice Admiral Dahl, do you know what's going on? Captain Tashigi was looking around the Navy warship in confusion and rapidly growing indignation. Commander Hibari. Rear Admiral Kujaku. Every Marine she could see was distinctly a woman. Her feelings of offense briefly halted as she saw Asuka, and gave her a wave. Whatever else, she would have to get the opportunity to spar with the nailing Marine before this was over. None of whom were, as much as she hated to admit it, the reassuring presences of her regular crew, or her mentor Smoker. No, I do not, Vice Admiral Dahl, slowly dragged out around her cigarette. A thunderous expression adorned her face. The backs of her hands planted against her hips while her head was on a swivel as she regarded the rest of the people suddenly put under her command. It's also interesting how young everyone here is. No mention of Dahl's own age, of course. Pardon? Vice Admiral Bluegrass isn't here, and her assigned area is close enough to be so. In fact, I think I see some captains and other officers who are her subordinates. So where's this floating harem to report to? Rear Admiral Kujaku teased as she sauntered up. Nonetheless, there was something vicious in the sword member's eye which promised retribution if she did not like the answer. If their destination was Mariajoy, there was going to be an immediate mutiny. Maybe they would go see if Pirate Empress Hancock would be interested in some new recruits? Or maybe join the Revolutionary Army if they wanted something more respectable? Bolo Betty seemed like she was a fun lady to hang out with. Or why not their very own queendom? The sky was the limit with this many hard-boiled, intelligent, and outright dangerous women all packed together. Scowling deeper at the implication, Vice Admiral Dahl said, apparently we're to report immediately to New Marineford to meet up with Vice Admiral Suru, her staff, Momosagi, and Hina, and from there an undisclosed extended mission within Paradise. But why? Cried Tashigi. Why were we rushed here, and why are we all women? There, she said it, out loud. Although by the looks of things, she just barely beat any of the others from doing it. Throwing her hands up in the air, Vice Admiral Dahl gritted out with an extremely forced calm, I don't know. The only other thing Suru said, was that we're to avoid any and all contact with Garp, including not answering his calls. If we see him, we're to run in the other direction as if all the emperors are after us, but she didn't say anything else. Wait, said Tashigi with a frown. Garp? Vice Admiral Garp? Yes. Blinking rapidly, Tashigi let that bounce around inside her head, thinking about all her encounters with the man, and the stories she had heard. Remembering a certain recent newspaper article. About a certain wedding, for a certain man's grandson. Blood pooling out of her face, Tashigi screamed at the helmsman, direct course for Navy HQ. All speed, everyone else start rowing. All veteran survivors of the New World, Rear Admiral Kujaku led the rest of the Marines in immediately leaping to do her bidding. They were all well aware that whomever actually recognized whatever danger they were in, and had that tone of voice, far outstripped any fancy schmancy rank. Grasping both of Tashigi's shoulders to pull her in close, Vice Admiral Dahl demanded, "Captain Tashigi, what is it?" "Garp's looking for a proper marine wife for his pirate grandson," shrieked Tashigi. One could visibly glimpse the Vice Admiral's recollecting her own past experiences with the hero of the Marines. It was not unlike watching someone see their life flash before their eyes. Without another word, Dahl leapt off the stern of the ship into the water, braced herself beside the rudder, and started kicking to push the warship even faster for all she was worth. -00 The three of them, Sanji, Reiju, and Luffy, bustled around the small dining table in a private room of the castle. It was cozy, with the smell of the freshly prepared meal still lingering in the air. Sanji had made sure of that, with Reiju lending a rare hand in the kitchen. More than once, she had to stop herself from commenting on the quantity of food. She remembered Sanji's earlier remark about Luffy's appetite, as he had seen her raised eyebrow when he started cutting the meat off several huge sea animals. Due to how busy she had been, this would be the first time in days she would actually be eating with her fiancé. It truly was a fun bonding activity between siblings, revealing a different side of her brother, how serious and detail-oriented he was while preparing food. Even the smallest touch mattered, and she wished he would show this kind of attitude toward other things as well. "Come on, you're sitting down with us," Reiju had insisted earlier, placing her hand firmly on Sanji's shoulder before he could retreat into his usual role of cook and server. For once, he didn't argue, just flashed her a small, knowing smile, perhaps appreciating the rare moment between brother and sister. Luffy, as expected, tore through the food as though it might vanish at any second. His ravenous appetite and rapid metabolism gave him the excuse to eat without pause. Plates of meat disappeared before she could even blink. Yet Luffy's energy remained boundless. If her upbringing hadn't been so strict, when she had first seen him like this, she might have gaped at him. Now while it remained pretty chaotic for her, it was also quickly becoming familiar, and perhaps even comforting. Reiju made a mental note to stock up on food. Lots of meat. They could never be without it. She wouldn't want to see what her future husband would look like. Was a good thing she was a queen. Big Mom's huge appetite was legendary. If there were any doubt about Luffy's lineage, it would surely be dispelled by witnessing his voraciousness. Shoveling felt more appropriate, she mused. Plus his was good training for when they dined with Big Mom's family. She wondered if his other siblings sat like that, too. -00 Sunny as one. Ace and Sabo perked up from where they were scarfing down massive slabs of meat like starving wolves. Standing over them, Izo, Koala, and Usopp were sharing commiserating looks over having people like this as nakama. "Yo, guys," called out Frankie from above deck, "you want to see this?" -00 Germa 66. "You know," Reiju started, breaking the lull, her eyes flicking between Sanji and Luffy. "Business has actually been better since Doflamingo went down. Fewer strings attached now." Sanji's easygoing expression immediately stiffened. He paused mid-sip from his glass, his brow furrowing. "I don't think that's exactly dinner table conversation, Reiju." In response, she gave him a sideways glance, her voice soft but pointed. "Isn't it? It's our reality, Sanji. Better to face it than pretend it isn't there." He let out a low breath, setting his glass down with a little more force than intended. "I'd rather focus on something else." Accepting it, she didn't press the point, but the silence between them thickened for a moment. She knew the conversation would come up again, sooner or later. Their family's criminal entanglements, especially with the removal of Doflamingo as competition, were far from over. But for now, she let it go. There were more important things to discuss, about the wedding. She trailed off, noticing Sanji's reaction. "Not again." "Ah." Sanji's eyes turned heart-shaped, his breath quickening. "Pudding," he murmured, nearly swooning at the table. "So cute, so perfect." He pulled out her picture from his pocket, creasing it in care as he began describing the young woman. Shy smile, the soft curve of her lips, her eyes, her. He was completely entranced, lost in the fantasy of what their life might be like together. "She's going to be my wife," he murmured softly, almost to himself, a goofy grin plastered on his face. Reiju, watching her brother from across the table, couldn't help but feel a mixture of amusement and pity. Poor girl, she thought. Or is she? Behind the sweetness Sanji was fixated on, Reiju saw the danger lurking beneath the surface. Being part of Big Mom's crew was a viper's nest, and it was unlikely Pudding was an innocent bystander. She couldn't be, not in that place. Sanji, oblivious to her thoughts, was too busy fawning over his mental image of Pudding, panting softly as he looked at the photo. His older sister found herself musing, for all his charm and culinary genius, he had a terrible blind spot when it came to women, especially ones as potentially dangerous as Pudding. Nevertheless, Reiju said nothing, letting him have his moment. She understood the need to hold on to something, especially with the path ahead of them. As they drew closer to Big Mom's territory, everything would get harder and more dangerous. Let him cling to his illusions a little longer, she reasoned. Reality would come crashing in soon enough. Luffy's fork clattered against his now empty plate, snapping the quiet moment. More meat, he declared, barely pausing between bites. Sanji sprang up immediately, the look of sick love on his face disappearing as he focused on serving more food. It almost gave Reiju whiplash how quickly his mood shifted. Leaning back in her chair, she watched her brother bustle about the kitchen again. She could almost see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Though for now, inside this small space, things remained warm and peaceful. Even if it wouldn't last. Big Mom, Pudding, and the future of the Kato family, formerly Vinsmoke. All of it was rushing toward them, unavoidable. Reiju swirled her wine thoughtfully, deciding once again to keep her conversation with Big Mom to herself. There would be time for all of that later. No point in worrying them. They already had enough on their plate. Or not, as Luffy's demands for more food echoed loudly. Her fiancé could be so loud, and yet she would not have him any other way. Tonight, at least, they could pretend everything was normal. For now, they were just siblings and fiancés sharing a meal. Luffy's insatiable appetite, Sanji's hopeless romanticism, and Reiju's quiet, watchful contemplation of everything yet to come. -00 to 0 Cacao Island Pudding sat in her room, staring at the small photograph of Vinsmoke, Blackleg, Sanji that she had been given. Unlike his ridiculous bounty poster, Katakuri, considerate as always, had snapped a picture to ensure she knew ahead of time what he looked like. His face, with that roguish grin and cigarette hanging from his lips, seemed almost too carefree. "This is the man I'm supposed to kill?" she scoffed, flicking the edge of the photo with her thumb. Katakuri's warning still echoed in her mind. Mama doesn't like that Amaya is too attached to this Sanji. He has to die. How typical. It runs in the family, she mused, killing your husband. Or in this case, fiancé. Mama promised me the wedding won't happen. He'll die just before we kiss to seal the ceremony. The jury, Mama, was still out if her newly discovered brother would still marry, or if his wife-to-be would also meet her maker, her deceased father, beforehand. Apparently this Reiju had pulled a coup, and so Mama wanted to get her measure first. Of course, Big Mom had been clear. Her orders were absolute. Pudding had always known her role in the family, and she had always played it well. This time would be no different, even if there was something about the whole situation that felt strange. She hadn't met Sanji yet. She had only seen the photograph, heard stories, some from Mama, some from her brothers, stories about his perverted nature, his obsession with women, and his ties to the Vinsmoke family. To her, he was just simply a pawn in Mama and their family's grand plan. Another obstacle to crush, like so many before him. He's just like the rest of them, she thought, her lips curling into a bitter smile. Lusting after women, thinking he's charming. What an idiot. And soon you'll be a dead idiot. Pudding leaned back in her chair, fingers brushing aside her bangs, her gaze lingering upon the reflection of herself, focusing upon her third eye. Something she had to cover up even with her family, only free to see it when she's alone. The thought of Sanji, this flirtatious fool, seeing it made her stomach twist. He'll recoil. They all do. Even though she hadn't met him, she already knew how it would go. He might flirt with her at first, his eyes filled with lust, that ridiculous heart-shaped gleam in them like she'd heard from Katakuri. But when he saw the real her, saw her third eye, his feelings would change. They always did. He'd look at her like a monster. He'll probably laugh, she thought, biting her lip, or worse, He'll try to pretend it didn't bother him to try and save his life. They always try, but you can see the truth of it in their eyes. She hated that feeling, that flicker of disgust people couldn't quite hide when they saw what was under the mask. It always reminded her that no matter how sweet she acted, no matter how much she pretended to be something else, she was still just a freak in their eyes. A monster, even to her own family. Feeling sickened by that reminder, she pushed aside such thoughts, and returned to her looping dark thoughts on her upcoming marriage. Katakuri had told her everything she needed to know about Sanji. He's a pervert, pudding. Always lusting after women. Don't think for a second he'll be any different with you. He might even be worse. The thought made her blood boil. Once more she imagined Sanji looking at her, not with kindness, but with lustful eyes, sizing her up as just another conquest. Just another pretty face. And just like every other time this scenario played out, it's third eye. The disgust rising within him, it always changes. She picked up the dagger on her desk, holding it delicately between her fingers. The very first one she had used to protect herself from her tormentors. The sharpness of the blade was comforting, a reminder of the power she held. She wasn't some kind victim. No, she would do what needed to be done. Looking at her gun set aside lovingly, recently cleaned, she felt a thrill of anticipation. Once she had seen his look of disgust, she'd pump him full of lead. Because that's what it would come to. Even without Mama's orders, even if there was no grand scheme, no deadly plot, Pudding knew she couldn't let someone like Sanji live. She no longer let people from outside of her family see her real self and look at her like she was anything less than perfect. Even most of her younger siblings had no idea of what she really looked like. Pudding's heart gave a tiny, restless tug, but she ignored it. Feelings were useless now, distractions that softened the edges she had spent so long sharpening. The plan was simple. Mama wanted Sanji out of the way, and Pudding would see it through. That was her role, it was what she was meant to do. She had spent her life pretending to be sweet, to be innocent, to be perfect, just like everyone expected her to be. But underneath, she was a weapon, sharp and deadly. He's just a fool, she told herself, looking back at the picture. A pervert who doesn't deserve to live. The plan was already in motion. Soon, they would meet, and she would play her part perfectly. Sanji would never see it coming, and bleed out gasping for mercy at her feet. -00 to 0,000 Sunny, is that the Kuja pirate flag? Asked Sabo, peering off into the distance. It is, said Ace with a complicated expression on his face, but what's she doing here? Stroking her chin in thought, Nami turned towards Robin, and nearly cringed at the older woman's expression. To the rest of the world, the demon child was radiating the same perpetual resting bloodlust and impatience as the rest of the crew beneath a thin facade of serenity. A proper Straw Hat, however, could aptly recognize Robin's inner chaos gremlin perking up, and considering getting more popcorn. Well, thought Nami as she released a sigh as she reflected upon when they had last seen the Pirate Empress, this should be interesting at least. Why is it Luffy can cause such a mess even when he's not around here? -00 to 0 Beast pirate ship as stealthily as possible. Yamato snuck out of the cargo hold of the ship. His broad grin undiminished despite the circumstances due to the lightness of his wrists. Free. Free. Free to sail the seas like Odin. I should try and find Ace. The ship rocked beneath his feet again from the storm. Which was perfect. With these heavy waves and winds, there would be nobody aboard the deck to see him slipping away in their small boat. Dingy, that was what it was called. Cracking the door open, Yamato peered outside, only to smack his head against the frame as the ship tilted again. Grumbling more from surprise than pain as he rubbed his cheek, he slipped out onto the dark deck. No one in sight, nothing from observation hockey either. The path to freedom directly in front of him, Yamato dashed for the Dingy only to stumble as the deck heaved up again. Stumbling, his Geta slid across the wet wood, and with a yelp of shock was tossed overboard into the merciless waters and howling gale. -00 to 0 Omake by the one and only, Bo you mortals. Your queen is here. Rose imagine me as a pirate cruising Anne. Shanks, here, have the honor to mirror my deepest and truest thoughts. Aboard the Red Force, the air smelled of spilled sake, burnt meat, and general chaos. Shanks slouched at the table, cup in hand, hair blazing like the sunset, staring off into somewhere. No one knew exactly where he was looking. Maybe the horizon, maybe the abyss, maybe the calendar of birthdays he hadn't been invited to. His crew knew better than to interfere. Denial. Shanks. Staring at his cup like it holds all the answers to life, the universe, and everything. 42. Oi, king of the night? King of the day? Both? Impossible? You're ageless, unstoppable, immortal, and yet, you have a birthday. A mundane, ordinary, terrifically unfair, glorious, cursed birthday. Benny, tell me this isn't real. You can't have a birthday and still rule. That's math? Universe rules? Rules broken? Huh? Huh? Ben. Arms crossed, unimpressed. Captain, it's just a birthday. Shanks. Waves him off. Just a birthday. Just a flipping solar eclipse of awesome and destiny and chaos. Fate. The old days are gone. Ben bu. My youth is gone. The rum is gone, and yet, a new adventure begins. A funeral for the past, maybe a celebration, maybe both at once, and you don't feel it? Anger. Shanks. Slamming the table, almost toppling mugs, his crew running to save the rum. Not the rum. Have some respect, people, respect, respect, and they allow you to exist while I, stumble around like a fool on my own ship. How dare you age while I'm stuck reminiscing, stuck drinking, stuck, thinking about Makino and pink frosting and weddings I can't crash and, arg. I should be there, I should rule this birthday. I should turn it into a duel, or a feast, or a funeral. No, both, and the cake, where's the bloody cake? Lucky Roo. Cheerful as ever, Captain. Either way we'll get drunk, funeral, feast, celebration, doesn't matter. Yasop. Raising a calm glass. To birthdays, funerals, cake, and chaos. Shanks. Points cup like a cannon. Exactly. And if anyone dares dull your shine, I'll, answer with fire. Blades. Rum. Maybe a musical number. Ben. Maybe a musical number. 1, 2. Why is no one singing? Mutiny. Kill them all. Benny. Bargaining. Shanks. Paces, nearly tripping over a chair. Maybe Ben can go instead. Observe, cheer, protect, but not interfere, unless interference is necessary, which it probably is. But what if the king doesn't need me? Huh? Impossible. A true king never stands alone. And you understand, don't you? Huh? Ben. Dry as ever. Mostly, Captain. Shanks. Hiccuping, muttering. Mostly, fine, but what if they need me to crash the party? Or save someone from pink frosting tyranny? Or duel a giant dessert buffet? Or, whatever? Cake. I deserve a cake. Depression. Shanks. Slumps, voice soft, shaking slightly, and yet, the reckless me, the old me, the me who stole youth with rum and laughter, gone. Vanished. Never to return. And you, living, thriving, aging, while I, stare at my cup and wonder why life is cruel and perfect at the same time. The night, the day, slipping through my fingers, and Makino. Oh, Makino, my Makino. Lucky Roo. Cheerful as ever, Captain. At least the king's alive. And celebrating, isn't that enough? Shanks. Glances sharply, smirking through a hiccup. Yes, celebrate, feast, drink, yes, but if danger comes, they'll answer to me. And maybe Ben, mostly me though. Yasop. Under his breath, glad to be left out of it. Acceptance. Shanks. Suddenly upright, hair flaming, eyes sparkling, cup raised high. Oi, king of night. King of day. Or whatever. Hear me. Today we honor you, celebrate you, feast for you, laugh for you, cry for you, drink for you, conquer for you. And know this. My home, the Red Force, is behind you. Even if slightly, incredibly, ridiculously, drunk. Today, we rule birthdays. We rule chaos. We rule adventure, and, cake. Definitely cake. Ben. Crossing arms, muttering, sober enough, Captain? Shanks. Grinning like a sun-drenched hurricane. Who cares? Today, we conquer birthdays, funerals, and adventures. Today, the King of Heaven and Earth reigns supreme. And if anyone gets in their way, I'll personally, throw them overboard. The crew cheers, mugs clanging, meat flying, laughter rolling across the deck. The red force rocks gently, as ends in the celebration of a king. One who rules both night and day, chaos and calm, rum and reason. Bo people, if it wasn't said enough times, happy birthday, Blackie, king of day and night and the in-between. May you rule those ungrateful peasants with a gentle hand-winking face rose out. Blackie. I'm not crying, you're crying.